begin with a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do you have any public?
Okay, so my understanding, there is no public comments, so we'll go ahead and get into the buildings and ground agenda. Okay, personnel action item. Yeah. Okay, we will start with a personnel action item. Approval personnel action item 3A is presented. What's that? So I need a first and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, unanimous.
Mr. Merris, if I can just jump in. Thank you. I would like to introduce, we have Mr. Ken Herr, be the assistant principal at Landisville Middle School for the next school year. Mrs. Amanda Calhoun, who will be the principal at East Petersburg Elementary School, and Mrs. Kelly Parker, who will be our special education supervisor at the secondary level. So congratulations to all three of you.
Welcome. All right, we'll now proceed to our first item under buildings and ground, the Mountville PTO. It's an outdoor classroom proposal. Stacy Kane and others, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for having us today as we come back to the table for our outdoor pavilion, the roof portion of it that we had requested a few years back. We finally have the ground foundation laid and we have been utilizing the outdoor classroom, but now we're ready to put the roof on it. So I also have with me our PTO presidents. I have Heather King and I have Heather Lorenz, who are going to be walking you through this next phase.
Thank you, Stacy. All right, we can go ahead to the next slide. So we are part of the Mountville PTO. I'm sure all of you are familiar with PTOs and what we do, but it's our mission. We're a committed group of parents and teachers working together to improve the educational experience for all of our students. So you can go ahead to the next slide. All right, so this is why we're here tonight. So our goal is to cover our pavilion. So phase one, that was completed back in 2020. So we installed a 50 by 30 concrete slab. At that time, we also installed 10 footers for the future pavilion that we wanted to put on. And then we also installed picnic tables. That way the space was still usable in the meantime, because we knew this would be a significant investment that would take a couple years to fundraise. So right now we're at stage 2. So this year we needed to work to raise funds to complete the project, which we have successfully done. We have obtained the applicable zoning permits through the township. And now we're here tonight just to get final approval for this project and our contractor, which is Creative Gazebos with the school board. And then stage 3, that's a future. We would love to be able to run electrical to this pavilion just to make it even better and more of a usable space. And then maybe some possible landscaping in the future too. So you can go ahead to the next slide. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the benefits of outdoor learning, but just to highlight some of them, being outside can increase attention and focus for children and adults too. It can improve stress levels and mood. I mean, think as soon as the weather changed, like you just feel the seasonal depression lifting from your body. So it's the same for our teachers and our students. So it's just great, any opportunity we can to get them outside. This is a space that can be used by the whole entire school. We could have outdoor parties there. We can have assemblies there. We can use it for meeting nights for our families. So things like Title I, support staff could utilize it. The principal could utilize it for rewards. So just, there's endless possibilities for this outdoor space. And for the teachers, it's great for them to be able to have another option just to, enhance their already existing curriculums for the students, maybe tie natural elements into their lesson plans, things like that. So I could go on and on about the benefits, but I'll just leave it there. You can go ahead to the next slide. So we are considering creative gazebos for the work. The project costs $79,717. We chose this company because they are locally run. They're based out of Lidditz. They offered competitive pricing, so they were a company that really believed what our goal is here, and really offered us a great price to complete this project with quality work. It's also custom designed for our school, so they did not have this already in their existing catalog of work. So they did design this for us, and it's installed by Creative Gazebos. So they're not outsourcing it to a third party to install this pavilion. It'll actually be this company that comes and installs it for us. You can go to the next slide. Just some overview of the materials that we chose. So it is a vinyl wrap post. These will be great because they'll last the longest over time. They can handle being exposed to the elements, and they can be just washed off simply with soap and water. So a lot of longevity there. We chose a hip roof, which that just comes down like a little further on the sides than a traditional A-frame. This will block the sun and provide more shade for the students and the teachers, which that's the biggest complaint right now. If you've ever been on the side of the building there, like there's no shade. It's very, very hot. So it would just really solve that problem and keep it cooler. And then they do offer a 10-year limited warranty on the structure and a 30-year warranty on the shingles, which is pretty industry standard. It has been engineered to exceed local wind and snow loads. And then we do have some additional building specs there. And then you can go to the next slide. I just have two pictures of the actual building plans, but I believe those were provided tonight. And they were in our permits, and everything was approved there with the township. So go ahead to the next slide. So just to talk a little bit about our efforts to fundraise for this project. So as a PTO, we host 2 major events a year. We host our fun run in the fall, which that raised $29,000. And we host our purse bingo and basket raffle in the spring, which was $15,000. And then just to get this project completed this year, we did launch a sponsorship campaign where we contacted local businesses and offered them different levels of sponsorship for our pavilion. And there we raised $15,800. Once the two of us were involved with the finances of the PTO, we really realized, this has been going on since 2020. So every year the PTO is saving a little bit of money, but we're always chasing that inevitable price increase. So just for example, from 2024 to 2025, this project went up $12,000. And we're just never going to be able to continue to compete with that if that's the amount of money it's going up every year. Yes, go ahead,
So
Greg.
what is your plan? Because you're at 15.8 right now. The cost is 75. What's your plan for getting from 15.8 to 75?
Well, we do already have the money in there. So we have over 100,000 in our account right
I'm
now.
sorry?
We have over 100,000 in our account right
Okay.
now. So we do have the funds. We went into this school year with over $60,000 in the account because we've been saving every year and setting aside for this. So, but we're kind of at a point where, the price goes up every year about $10,000 to $15,000. So looking at that, if we don't do this pavilion this year, then again, we're going back to businesses and asking for another $15,000 next year. So we're just, really excited to get this done this summer.
So what do you need from us?
Just your final approval.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this was approved by the board years
Back in
ago.
2020,
They're
it was
just- They're just coming forward to say they have it now, and so Mrs. Hall will do this as a donation. So that'll be coming up.
I
at
thought
the-
we approved it. I thought we blessed the project back then.
We did, but we didn't have this particular piece in terms of the dollar value.
Okay.
So it'll become a donation May meeting? Yeah, at the May board meeting.
Personally, when I saw this, I thought, didn't we do that already? So congratulations for
Yeah.
being able to get all the money together, and I look forward to seeing the final project.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're very excited. The only other thing, so we'll leave copies of this with you. We do need to confirm our date. So if Buildings and Grounds could confirm that, what would be a good date over the summer? We need to choose the roof color and we need to choose the timber color as well. So obviously the district should make those decisions just to make sure it matches the building and looks aesthetically good. So we can leave those with you too. But any other questions?
I just wanted to offer one small suggestion for you. With the cross beams underneath, if they put those bird wires, do you know what I'm saying?
No.
They're like, I think they're shaped like
Oh.
bees to keep birds from nesting.
Okay.
And then you have a lot of cleanup in
Okay.
there. Might be just one little helper to not have
Yeah.
problems while you're out there.
Yeah, we can definitely ask about that. Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
No, thank you for this project. It's excellent. Appreciate your presentation. Any other questions from board members?
That's great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll just leave that to you then. Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item, KCBA update, and looks like the first item on the agenda is a geotechnical update. I don't know who's going to be presenting that. Are you? All right, come on forward.
I'm sorry, Mr. Merris,
Yeah,
when are we voting on this? On accepting?
I think she said it.
At the
What's that?
at the May board meeting.
Yeah, I think that's what we just said, yeah.
Okay, is there a reason that we're waiting until May so that they can't get started on it?
I believe it's all the paperwork we need to gather.
Well,
Yep, all the paperwork we need to gather and get everything done and signed off on.
Okay, go ahead. You have good news for us, right?
Hi, yes. So Ryan Orr, KCBA Architects. There is good news from the geotechnical report. There was a summary provided. In one short sentence, yes, the building can be built where we're planning to build it. Groundwater is 10 feet below where we're going to be building our finished floor. So that's good news. And basically all the other structural pieces that were found, we'll be able to accommodate during our design through our foundation design work with our structural engineer. So they're going to continue to monitor the groundwater to make sure it doesn't fluctuate for the next couple of months as was requested by the board. So that will continue to happen, but in general, the building can be built where we are planning to build it.
And is there any issue? Obviously, there's no issues with the piling that's probably going to be installed to support.
So we're able to utilize shallow footings to build the building, so we won't need pilings to support the building. So that was the findings from the geotechnical report.
Excellent. All right, questions?
How does this compare to other buildings? Because are we gonna have still the spring problem and some of that stuff? Like you said, 10-foot groundwater is 10 foot. How does that compare to most buildings?
Most buildings, it depends where you're building. It's not unheard of to have groundwater that low, we'll say. I don't want to say high because buildings can be built with groundwater higher. But it gives us a good cushion. Your footings will typically go 3 feet below grade. So that gives us a good 7 feet before we're even getting anywhere near that groundwater. Now, that's not to say that there won't be some sort of discovery during construction, so don't want to downplay that at all. But all things considered, it's good news from the geotech.
So we're not going to have a whole bunch of pumps like we have below the
So
Performing Arts Center.
the existing pack, the basement there, that is the lowest point in the project. We are not going anywhere near that depth. Our finished floor will be the height of the existing Buchanan gym. So there is a good bit of distance between those two floor levels.
Okay, any questions?
I just have a random question that, thank you for the report. I actually did read it all.
Okay.
I didn't have my husband read it to explain it to me. I got it. The one thing I had a question about, and I don't know when you're pouring the concrete, how long does it have to cure before you can build on it?
So full concrete comes up to 75% strength within 7 days, and then full curing is 28 days. So there will be construction testing that happens when we're building the foundations that will test the concrete to make sure that concrete is coming up to strength as it's being built. So within that first 7 days, we're gonna make sure it's coming up to a predetermined strength. If the test fails, we then have remediation measures to remedy that. But if it's coming up to strength in that 7-day period, then a 28-day test is taken care of to confirm that it has come up to strength.
And so is it, when you can actually have the date to pour it, is that tied to the weather cycle at all?
There are some weather considerations. What mostly happens is if you are pouring in extreme cold or extreme heat. Then we have to have certain considerations for the contractors to take care of during those pouring times. But our structural engineer will provide specific guidelines to the contractors that they'll have to follow in those conditions. And then on-site supervision will make sure that they're following those procedures as well.
I was also very glad to know we have people who know what they're doing this.
Okay.
I was amazed at how much information that they got for us. It was astounding to me. I know you don't just throw a building up.
Right.
And I actually know you have to pour concrete and you have to do this and do that, but there was so much more. So again, thank you for the thoroughness of this reporting.
Sure.
As I was reading through all of it, you referred to, potential findings that might happen as you're doing your excavating and things like that. Is there sufficient contingencies for the kind of things that you might discover as far as our budgeting and that goes?
So in further investigation throughout the design, if there are specific areas where we know we're going to hit certain soil types or run into certain soil conditions, we'll build in an allowance that we will know we are going to use throughout construction. Of course, there's always an unforeseen condition that might pop up, but that's what your construction contingency is for, built into the total project cost as well.
So how many tons of dirt are you gonna have to pull?
Yet to be
Take
determined.
away and bring in?
Yet to be determined.
Okay. A lot.
Do you anticipate blasting for
No,
any of
no,
it?
there will be no blast.
neighbors,
Yeah,
okay.
it'll all be excavator.
I didn't read the detailed report, but how many samples were taken, like just ballpark?
20? Yeah, 20 total test borings and then 10 infiltration. 10 infiltration bays.
So I assume they were spread out over the whole.
Yes,
so-
yes. And one of the criteria is we didn't want to disturb the baseball field. There you go. Perfect image up there. So you can see all those target points are the areas that were test board. And then you can see the area to the right there. The baseball field, we didn't want to affect that, but we did an additional 3 borings on the other side of the baseball field to connect the dots between those areas.
Thank you. Any other questions from any board members? Board?
Not right now.
Okay, I think the next item is athletics.
You want to?
John, you come on up.
The overall one, the overall. Yes. Perfect. So as a general update to the field project, KCBA in conjunction with ELA took the cost estimate that was prepared by Fidavia and graphically laid those projects out over top of the site plan in the area south of Kaufman Road. So that's the area that we're taking a look at here. So all of the projects that were line items in Fidavia's previous budget were included here. We also had an additional meeting between district admin, the building grounds committee members, just to work out some of the finer details of that plan. So what resulted from that was taking a look at how much work is actually done in the existing field house, existing concession stand. And one of those pieces that was considered was actually building a new combined toilet facility for the stadium, a new team room, and new trainer building that will be situated along Muma Drive at the end of the stadium. So that's one change from the original Fidavia estimate that you'll see there. In red are the existing or the proposed baseball and softball field, which were originally included in the project. And then the upper two yellow squares there, parking lot, the existing parking lot, lighting relighting project, and then to the right, the band practice parking area is an additional piece that was not included previously in Fidavia's estimate, but we're able to take some funds from other areas that we were going to expand parking by the proposed baseball field and move those funds up to the band practice fields. The other pieces, as a reminder, as part of this project, proposed maintenance shed to the south of Landisville Middle School, as well as press box reconstruction at both the home and the away sides, as well as upgrades to the bleachers, which include ADA upgrades as well, and stadium lighting as a project as part of this too. We really want to focus in on the field house, which is the next slide there. So this is the enlarged field house and toilet room capacity for the stadium. So you can see right now it's broken into two halves. So the visitor side would be to the north. Those toilets are sufficient for the visitor side bleachers. The southern half would function for the home side bleachers. The home side also is double-sided to accommodate work or games at the quad, at the baseball field, and at the softball field. So that allows for those folks, when the stadium is not in session, to utilize those bathrooms. And then when the stadium is in session, we can open up those toilet rooms to the stadium side. Included as part of this building is our 2 team rooms, as well as trainer room. And this trainer room would mainly function as the water source for all of the fields, the stadium, as well as the stadium main training area. That way, also tied in with this in the high school, that trainer facility can really focus on rehab and court sports, where this one's focused on really hydration and the fields. Then you can see.
Excuse me, would you say that again? I was so
Yes,
busy focusing.
no
on-
problem.
About the there are 2 training rooms?
Yes, so-
There's one in the main, in the main building, and then
Yes.
this one during session, games and events.
Primarily, yes, yeah, and it would also function as the main hydration area where they can bring their gator, fill up the water jugs, and take them to the various fields for the teams. So they wouldn't need necessarily gator access at the new training room in the high school. All of that would function out of this field house building.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
How many total toilets in both restrooms? Just curious.
I didn't know.
10, 20,
Did you,
30.
I don't know, did you have a question?
Yeah, I asked how many total toilets? All both restrooms?
67.
Okay. That a good size for an outdoor stadium?
So that is code compliance for your stadium seating as it
Okay.
exists.
Because we have how many now?
In behind concessions, 12.
So-
Porta potties.
Plus
So,
those porta
so
potties.
considerable improvement.
Yes.
What were the Ts up there?
So those are individual family toilets. So
Okay.
as an assembly space, an area that
Excellent.
families can utilize.
And did you say that only the lower set of bathrooms would be open to use for quad events, but the upper ones would not?
That's the current
We
plan.
wouldn't need that many opened.
Yes, and that was a discussion. Would you open another set that you then have to maintain?
Right, right.
So always a trade-off
Yep.
back and forth.
So I'm sorry. If we have tournaments here and they're spread out all over, whether they're our teams or community use, will these facilities be opened then?
So if it's an outside entity using our facility for a
Mhm.
large event, part of the agreement is they're responsible to bring in
They bring their own porta
the porta
potty?
potties.
Gotcha.
So these would only be open for district events.
So if there's a big district tournament,
These would be open.
okay.
Like I was thinking of like 6th grade field day, like over at the high school, it's nuts over there, like.
They do.
So basically, anytime the district is using any of these spaces,
Yep.
whether it's there or,
We're at the
I
quad.
don't know whether that soccer field and the girls soccer.
Right, the quad.
Softball
yeah,
is,
softball.
a lot of stuff's going to be going away.
Yep, that would be open.
Okay, great. Thank you.
When, I don't see the showers in the locker room. Or is that somewhere else?
So as a concept plan, we haven't fully fleshed out everything that is going into exactly where it's depicted here and how many of them there are. So right now we're getting the spaces
Okay.
and then we'll fill them out with exactly how many showers, how many.
Okay.
I thought do our athletes use showers? Maybe I looked to the high school principal.
Yep.
They don't typically use showers at the school anymore, do they?
Not crowd anyone out. So no, the showers aren't used extensively, at least not like they used to be. We talked about in the team rooms, probably having like 2 shower stalls, individual stalls would be sufficient for, if someone needed to or wanted to take a shower. But to Ryan's point, this is kind of trying to get a concept in front of you.
Sure.
This is our first real stab at this. What they came back with was checks a lot of the boxes. Once we kind of have like your approval, like, yeah, it's a good direction to head in, then I'm sure we'd sit down with our coaches and our athletic director. And just like we did last week with the high school, trying to, okay, what are we going to put in the space? We would, define those spaces a little bit more. I met with Mr. Landis today to make sure that he thought that this would meet our needs and talked about, the bathroom being open from both sides and do we need that one open from both sides? And so there'll be a lot more conversation. Super excited to have something in front of you tonight to, see if we're heading in the right direction.
The last I had seen this, we were still talking about for the visiting team doing something with the old field house. Is that just being demolished or what's the plan for the use of that?
Sure. So, and Ryan can jump in, but the existing field house would they've designated that for light renovation. He can talk to you about what light renovation would be, but anyone who comes to us, visiting football team right now, they're huffing it from Landisville
Right.
Middle School. So the plan would be to have, the existing field house would service visiting teams and the new facility would house our home teams.
So you're saying the home team is gonna be split into 2 different rooms? Because if
That
the,
JV and bar-
yeah, because if the visiting team is using the current building, right? Isn't that what you said? The visiting team would be using the current building?
Yeah, so the existing field house that would be visiting, and then the team room you see here would be for your home, if it's football season, your home football season, and they would be able to be accommodated by the single 80 locker team room.
Well, what's a 50 locker team room?
There's
That's
2.
So we got to think about multiple seasons. We got fall, we got spring. So, the football team would take up the larger side, the 80 locker side in the fall. The other side would accommodate all our other sports that, so boys soccer, girls soccer, field hockey, that would give them a facility in the stadium when they're playing games there. And then in the spring, boys and girls track, would take both sides of that. And, so it's very similar to our setup now.
Do we currently have that many teams playing the exact same time that we couldn't have one big room?
Well, so football with all of its equipment and everything, that's kind of takes a whole space for itself in the fall. And that's what the other side would be used for, all the other teams that are kind of rotating through. And then track in the spring, again, you got boys and girls track, boys and girls lacrosse could rotate through. So that, yeah, but
Run at the same
But-
time.
right, not at the same time.
So,
Some are at the quad, some are at the stadium. So
That's between both.
So a question. I've been in that old field house.
Mhm.
Is that, you can really renovate that and not tear it down?
So,
It's pretty,
yeah, and
It's
light renovation is extremely light. It's getting it in working order, we'll say, but for the visiting team, we're not trying to build,
You don't want to treat them too nice.
Yes.
No.
No, I understand that. I mean, it's just a sad, smelly situation
Yeah.
in there, so.
Well,
You
the
do tell them
building,
what the rooms are.
the building's not falling down, so we don't want to tear it down. We want to use it some way, so that makes sense to me, unless somebody thinks different.
Oh, I'm all about renovations. I'm just going by what I saw is that.
To your point, it's not falling down, it's structurally
Okay,
sound,
that's good.
it's got bones that we can reuse.
Even if you have to take down some of those walls in there?
So that would be we wouldn't take any walls
Yeah,
down. We would-
everything's gonna,
it
you
would-
just kind of clean it up, make the shower,
Kids smell them.
things go away.
So hot, yeah, the main pieces really are mechanical, hot water heating, lighting, things of that nature. Yes, freshman.
And I'll speak for all the visiting football teams. They'd much rather, they'll take that existing facility versus walking all the way to LMS.
Okay.
Yep.
So please remind me, is this the 21 million in cost here that we're seeing, is this included in the 210 million for the high school?
No.
So what tranche of money is this coming? Is it the,
This is long range. What we need to be doing, what we need to be working on. The one that is included in the 210 is the baseball softball field dollar value, which I believe is
Yes.
4 million.
4 million, yes.
okay, because so the long range, what I'm struggling with is it's increasingly difficult to keep track of what project is coming out of what budget and how much we're spending total. And in a couple minutes, we're gonna have a robust budget discussion, and the board is all over the place in terms of what kind of tax increase to have. Now we're talking about spending another $21 million here, which is not part of the 210 million. Which is that part of like the new Centerville Elementary School, that tranche of money? So,
Well, I mean, I guess technically, we don't have a new school in the horizon on the elementary. It was something that we're looking at down the road, was what we do with that building. But we do have additional dollars in our cap reserve that we've been building up for projects, for things that the board has already approved, 3-year plan, accepted that. We're working through year 1. At the same time, what John from Fidavia is going to share is you'll see a breakdown of options of things to be doing over time and working towards. And
okay. I mean,
part of that is prioritizing. So
it would be very helpful to see a master plan that pulls everything together and keeps track of it, because I for one struggle to keep track of what pot of money is paying for what and what we've already committed to, what we might be committing to, what we can afford and what we can't afford. So it would be very helpful to just have one master plan.
that's being
We might
developed.
be approving
I
of
think,
separate.
I think we kind of did that, Grant, with, this is something new here, but we're planning for what we need to do with athletics. So this is something new, but I think in a future meeting, we could kind of have that plan, but we've kind of kept the high school project separate.
And
And
we don't.
all the other
plan
project-
paying For this. is
what's
what
that?
No, a lot of
It's
what you're.
not a plan for this $21 million.
A lot of what you're seeing, things have initial discussion, initial conversation, take the fields out of the equation. When we talk about lighting, we talk about the stadium repairs, other things that need to be done, you'll see it on the list. And we're trying to bring back conceptual ideas to get a sense from the board, because we've had conversations before when we started this process. We then get in the conversation of, should the press box be large or small? Should it be on one side? Should it be on the other? We're trying to get an understanding from the board's perspective as to what's working conceptually so that we can actually do that larger plan. We are looking at prioritizing things as we move forward, because obviously can't do it all at once. And that's what we've started working through. When you see that list of items that will ultimately end up having to be prioritized, but it is something to be mindful of. And as our PTO members from Mountville have shared, when you wait on things over time, costs will go up. So we do need a plan, and yes, things will change over time. But we do need to start looking at not just the high school and what was accepted by the board on the 3-year, but all of those other things are going to start to filter in. So yes, a master plan is coming, but we're trying to get a sense from the board, is this the direction of what you were thinking about, so we can move in that path?
And I appreciate that. I really do. I think the point I'm trying to make is, I don't know, we see inspiring plan after inspiring plan. That all looks like great stuff, right? It's all stuff that in a world of limitless resources, I think we can all agree that we'd love to have. But we're not in that world. And showing us things that we haven't seen a financial plan for paying for, I don't know that that makes sense.
I feel like
I-
I'm sorry, I feel like board members asked for this.
Mhm.
There were board members who asked for this to
You did.
see what it would look like. And so they're just fulfilling their duty, their job to bring it to us. I don't think it's out of some crazy realm, but this was asked for, so.
Okay, and that may be Mrs. Eshelman, but I don't know why we're asking for things that we have no idea how we're going to pay for them.
I think it's unfair to say that we don't have any idea how we're going to pay for it, but I also think it's premature to suggest that we know exactly what bucket it's going to come from. There will be at least 3 buckets. We borrowed that $15 million year over year that has been sitting and earning interest for us. We've also set aside some capital reserve funds, and we've also positioned ourselves for a borrowing capacity. So I think it's a shell game when you look at what bucket it's going to come from. No, we haven't determined that yet. But I do think the one thing that we've all agreed to is that our stadiums and our facilities are in rough shape, and they probably needed to be dealt with years before now. And that really delaying that is probably not a great option because the cost will continue to go up. And similar to the pavilion example, we'll just be chasing our tail if we continue to delay the inevitable along while we have facilities that, and in a district like this, I can't say that most people could be proud of. It's not all about the facilities, but we aren't even ADA compliant anymore with some of our stuff. We don't even have bathrooms that are usable. I mean, some of this is honestly to the point that it's not even appropriate. So I'm not all about a beautiful facility, and I don't believe that's the guts of our community, and that's what gives us our Hempfield pride. But I also believe we need functional facilities. So I went into a little bit of a rant there, but I agree with you, Grant. We haven't decided where it's going to come from, but I also agree that we've talked about this in conjunction with the high school project, believing that even though we're going to treat this as a separate project because we can get better bids for it, that it makes sense to review this and continue to do this while we're looking at the facilities and having to move fields. It doesn't make sense to do it in a silo. It really is going to save the district money long-term to figure this out collectively, even if it's bid separately.
And I would add to that, if it's something that we're looking for down the road, there's no way to plan for how to pay for it if we don't know what it might cost. So we need to get those concepts of cost so that if it's something, yes, that seems like it would meet our future needs, now we can plan for how are we going to get those funds and over what period of time will we need. So I think they work hand in hand.
And I appreciate both of those perspectives. I don't disagree with them. But I mean, I don't want to jump ahead of the agenda, but we're about 15 minutes away from talking about whether we're going to increase taxes to match or cut programs and classes. So that's sort of what I'm trying to wrap my head around right now.
I think we need to revisit the money that we have, the stuff that we've already committed to, the additional money we may have, and prioritize these different projects here. We're not going to do all 21 million at a time. Maybe we attack the bathrooms first. I don't know, but we know what the total lump sum is. Let's attack it one at a time with the money that we have and not say, oh, it's not like we're pretending we don't have any money in reserve. And we're going to borrow that 15 million each year. So I think we need to revisit and look at this in a bigger picture, working with Mrs. Hall, Mr. Bremersky, and kind of come up with a new plan, maybe how we implement these things and when and how much.
Which I would say, go back to the word stewardship. We have not exercised good stewardship over those facilities. That's why we're not ADA compliance. That's why when you go up to sit at a ball game, it's not safe. I mean, I take my grandkids there and I spend my whole time hoping that they don't fall through the fence. I mean, when we're in the bleachers. The other thing is, you can't plan for a major renovation unless you, in my opinion, unless we know what the best possibilities are. Once we see that plan, we may go, 60 toilets are too much. We only want 40, but we never know that until we see the big plan. And I think what you presented to us is exactly what we asked for. We want to know what we need to do and how much it's going to cost and what it's going to look like. It's a sad state of affairs. Several places in our property are. Something's got to be done, but we don't know what has to be done until you present these plans to us. And then we will do just like we have always done with all of our plans. The committee will look with it, Bill and his team, and they're gonna look for it. And then there's gonna be a lot of line crossing and rearranging and all that stuff. That is all part of the process. And then the finance committee and Karen, they're gonna figure out how the money comes and what the phases are gonna be. And am I worried? No, I'm not worried. I think we're being prudent in what we're asking for. And it's gonna make it easier. We know what we're asking for. What is it gonna look like? And then when it comes down to it, what can we afford and not afford? And we are all very financially aware of our budget and of tax rates. We're all taxpayers here. We're aware of it, and I think we will exercise good fiscal responsibility throughout our whole robust discussions, which are important as we exercise our responsibility as a board. So I'm not confused.
I think the
I'm
other
moving
thing,
with it.
the
Yeah.
other thing is KCBA, we have them here for the high school project. And we're taking advantage of their expertise, and they've come up with some good ideas with our athletic fields and bringing up some of them. And in fact, I love the idea with the restrooms on the side of the fence there so the outside can use it. And quite frankly, our existing restrooms are deplorable. So I love what they're presenting. And because we have them with us now, we can take advantage of them looking at some of these kind of things while they're working on the high school project.
I love it. So-
Okay, what else? Do we have anything else?
So if we could go back, so the two projects included in the high school piece are the baseball field and softball. Yes.
Yep.
So you from ELA is here, so he can
Okay,
talk through these.
yeah, I will have to say too, talking about the field house, having been an assistant coach for freshman football for 8 years, we never use the showers. Only the referees use the showers. So, yeah, we use it as storage more than anything. So, okay, this is the old LIC site. And what we've done here, this is the varsity baseball field. Took a look at fitting it in there due to the size of it. We're gonna have to reconfigure the existing old LIC parking that's over there, which you see is a replacement parking lot in the upper right. A new road coming on back to there for some parking for coaches or referees, et cetera. The shed farm, as you see, is still there. Putting some handicap parking spaces right behind the home plate area. 2 40-foot dugouts. The dimensions of the field are 310 on the lines, 380 in the center field. So this is the first project. We have bullpens for each and also a batting tunnel. And for softball, and the orientation now there is actually appropriate for baseball. Yeah, you want to go to the softball? Good. Okay, the softball is actually a renovation to it. Again, looking at Title IX issues, you want to make sure that what's addressed here is similar to what was the new baseball field, again, with now what I've done, everyone knows about the hill up above where the seating areas and stuff, where that's kind of the field is kind of shoved into the hill there. Slid it down a little bit so that way it's more in the plateau area. The field, the top, the hill up, the bank up top could still be used for seating or whatnot, but we've used a similar configuration here. Again, orientation also is acceptable what it currently is at. New scoreboard, the baseball would have a new scoreboard. So again, very comparable I've also put in a walkway from the quad parking on down, because you're gonna need ADA access down fields. We also, again, like with the baseball fields, we have ADA, put the ADA parking behind. I don't believe right now there is any ADA spaces on this side of the quad. I don't think so. So may look at, as part of the plan, maybe convert some of them over, so you can become more ADA compliant with that. But so again, comparable to what the baseball field is, obviously smaller. These are shown as natural grass fields. There was some discussion about the possibility of maybe considering turf. I provided a memo so for the board to take a look at with that. So pretty much that in a nutshell with describing what we had there.
The piece with the baseball and softball field, as long as the high school project continues, we need to get moving on these fields, particularly one on the off time of the softball season to get that work done so that that field is ready, given that grass has already been in existence and is already rooted well there. But for the baseball field, that needs time to not only be built, grass to grow, and then the grass to really rest and get really well rooted there to be able to play on it in 2 years. So in terms of next steps for that particular project, and that was one of the conversations we started having, was, is there anything else potentially from a stadium standpoint to wrap into those two projects to get a better deal in terms of quoting things out and being able to do it a little differently, still within the proper procurement procedures. But what would be the next steps for us to keep that moving, so that we can get working on that?
As you discussed, the other thing too with the overall planning, as part of the campus zoning for the campus, a master plan has to be presented to the township. So any potential improvement that could happen in the foreseeable future, foreseeable being open to interpretation, but such things as, field house or, or the storage units, storage building, the new maintenance building, we need to show on a plan. So our next steps are taking a look at this is to actually approach the township to kind of have a sit down discussion with them, looking at ways we could, what we're proposing, what the district is proposing, then what steps we should take from a permitting standpoint and prioritizing what those are. There are some restrictions when it comes to when you're doing a whole batch of things on the site. It's not easy to separate something, but there are ways of doing it. And that's what we would be looking at, talking to the township and also the conservation district. So those are going to be our next steps. Currently, the survey we should be getting the survey within a week or so. They've been delayed due to some aerial photography, photogrammetry. You've probably seen them out here doing that job, because the file we have on hand right now was done 20 years ago. And it's obviously been, it's a little outdated, but at least it's been something to work on. So that's where we currently stand at the moment. So
I have a question for you, Mike. You did give us a comparison between turf and grass.
mm-hmm.
And you're saying, you said letting the grass grow, but so is that preferred to have grass, or is this too early to ask that kind of question?
Through conversations that we've had with different teams, building and ground committee team members as well, and looking at it, yes, is there an ideal standpoint when you look at the comparison that you did for the turf versus the grass? Yes, but that indicates that both fields would be having lights so that you can use them to get the maximum load of events. We don't anticipate at this point, anything I've heard, putting lights on those fields. That would certainly add a lot more cost. So when you look at the cost at this point, it makes, from a dollar standpoint, that makes the most sense to invest on the grass field. A lot of the fields that our teams do play on in the baseball and softball are grass, but you are starting to see some moving to turf. Dr. Brosman, anything else? Yeah, that covers what we talked about.
When I look at the comparison of synthetic turf versus the natural grass, you look at basically, I think 2.2 million versus 1.3 million or something. There's a gap of 850,000 in additional cost to put the turf in. When I look at your analysis over the period of, I believe it was 10 years that you put in here, I believe that the cost to maintain the grass you end up with an all-in cost of 20,000 over 10 years plus versus the say 20 million versus the 7 million. Is that accurate? Did I interpret that correctly?
No, I think it was 20,000.
Table B.
20,000 a year, I think.
Oh, maybe 20,000 a year. I was
Yeah.
right. 20,000 a year, not 20
That-
million.
And actually, that,
7,000 a year.
that chart is
Okay.
actually based off of a sports management facilities chart that they actually created a couple of years ago, and we've updated it and enhanced it a little bit.
Yeah, I was reading that wrong. I mean, it still is a lot more obviously to maintain grass. I think
Yeah.
about 3 times as much.
Yeah, I think the thing, and often too, it's like, again, I've coached here for 20 years, various, sports, and I know I'm very familiar with the fields, and, you have to compare irrigated, sub-drainaged, sand system fields to turf. You can't compare the cost to your standard fly-by-night, standard high school field, because it's a field. So, and often resodding is required. Any school that would have, I'm trying to think of one locally who has a football stadium only. I can't, only thing I can think of Pottstown, where they have a dedicated football field, and they resod it every 5 years, the crown. But that's all that's allowed to play on. They just save it for football.
I don't have any major concerns with the grass versus the turf. I think it could go either way. I'd prefer to play on grass, but I'm old school, so I know that I think whatever makes the most sense financially and for the district in the long term is the direction we should be going with it.
We just have to make sure we have the irrigation available to keep the grass watered for Mrs. James and her team. They've done a really great job. As all of you know, we've had issues with our grass fields in the past. They've worked really hard to bring them back. And a lot of time, energy, and effort and dollars went into doing that. All that said, when you have grass fields, and we've had this conversation a lot, you can't play on them 24/7. We do have to close grass fields so the grass has time to rest, regenerate, and kind of get back into shape. And we are not good at that here because there's a high demand for the use of our fields. So moving forward, we are going to be committed to this. Everyone has to understand that there are times those fields will be closed, which means we are going to have to say no to people using our facilities. In the long run, that'll help us from a standpoint of the fields will be available for a longer time. But if there's not a willingness to do that now, we need to have that discussion. So.
Did we get a price on what it costs for the whole irrigation and everything else? Like, that's not included in this, I'm assuming.
I think it should. I don't think it's gonna support the 4 million that we have in there. I don't think it's gonna support turf necessarily, but I think it will support the irrigation.
Okay, so that'd be helpful to get the cost of that, because that should be added on to the cost of the turf field versus the grass field versus the turf field. That needs, because that 800,000 whatever is gonna shrink per field, the difference. So it'd just be helpful to get that information as well.
Because that number for the field, I'm pretty sure includes irrigation and sub-drainage. If you look at the footnote, that's in there. I'm pretty sure it does. Again, that is just a budgeting number.
It says water equipment, but I'm assuming that's per year because it's wrapped into the mowing and seeding and all.
So there's an irrigation factor, maybe not an in-ground.
Yeah, because there's gonna be, what's a additional cost of putting in the one-time costs? Right, and we talked about maybe using the water and stuff, like we're working on some other numbers and didn't include in that.
Yeah, and water wheels are acceptable. In the ground irrigation is top line, but it's a little more durable, but more of a maintenance issue.
Yeah, it does look like it's included there if I'm reading it correctly. Irrigation of the natural gas, 16 weeks times 2 hours per week is what you factored in.
Yeah, but that's not the initial cost of installing all of it. So what's the cost of installing all of the irrigation system?
You're suggesting that's included?
Yeah, let me.
Okay.
Can I throw just a different path a little bit, not directly involved in
Installation. Yes.
or not directly related to installation or maintenance costs of grass versus turf, but how often do we take into account things like impact to an athlete, right? We know that there's significant studies that injuries happen a lot more on turf than they do grass. What conversation needs to happen around that too? Just
Well, I'm sorry if I'm cutting in here, but
That's all right.
this is kind of my wheelhouse. To be blunt, it often depends on who you pay to do the study. Because the one thing with synthetic turf fields, there are more common, they're more even, you don't have your divots, you don't have your ankle breakers. So that's the one thing, it's a more reliable surface when it's a synthetic turf field. But often a lot of these injuries, what research is showing, and it doesn't really apply at our level, high school kids, more the pro levels, is that certain styles of shoes are never factored in on injuries, and they're starting to be looked at. And that has a little bit bigger impact than people really thought. Some of these shoes, and a lot of it's because people are sponsored to wear Nike or Puma, that even exists anymore. And that often factors in as well. That's not to say that synthetic turf is better or worse necessarily, but a lot of the impact a lot of the injuries that happen are pro level athletes. And there's a batch of studies which I could make available to the board to go through and take a look at, what the take is. Certain types of injuries are a little more prevalent. But lower body injuries, really the studies I've seen recently are pretty much even. It's all but again, it's what study, who paid for the study, but there are studies done by, third parties that are out there I could provide to the board.
I'm not yay or nay in any direction. Just want to make sure as a guy that played 4 sports in high school and played sports in college, I and tore my ACL, and you know what I mean? Like, I think about this stuff. At the end of the day, if we're going to build something for an athlete and then they can't use it because they blew their knee out and they're out for 9 months, what's the point? So I just want to make sure that's not lost on this group here at this table.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So seems to be at least no opposition for Hugh to keep moving forward, getting a meeting with the township to keep things progressing with the fields at this point.
When do we need to decide which way we're going?
In terms of whether it's fields and add anything else to it?
No, turf or grass.
Not right at the moment. I mean, it's when the time comes for them to actually be built, we would need to know, because from a stormwater perspective, synthetic turf is considered impervious like a parking lot, not from a zoning perspective. And so the design of the stormwater system would have to accommodate the difference. So.
So that you'll get back to us when that date is, or what you'll need from us?
Yes, we will.
Great. Okay.
And is all this happening in a time frame that allows us, assuming we move forward, that the baseball field can get started on time?
So we're.
Yep.
Yeah, the key is that be able to separate it. That's what we have to make sure the agencies are agreeable to.
Right.
I mean, when you put it in context that this is to allow the school to be built, there's a logic to it, which again, that often will allow you that ability to separate. So.
Great. Any other questions on the turf? All right. Is there anything else KCBA is going to be presenting?
Not presenting, just want to mention, Bill alluded to it last week, for 3 days, our team and the building administration team met with teachers and staff, various departments, very successful meetings. I think they appreciated the opportunity for us to listen to them. So we took down, some of their ideas, their thoughts. Throughout the summer, we'll take a look at those and start incorporating them into the design, and then come back in the fall and show them what resulted from those conversations, and then get into a little bit more detail of specifics within their room. So this was, really broad picture. It would be nice, I could do X, if I had Y. Can you accommodate it? So lots of good conversations. And we'll follow up with notes to the team on those conversations.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Before we end buildings and grounds, I've been informed that Dr. Dandridge has an item to discuss with us.
Just I wanted to make you aware, at the upcoming ed programs committee meeting in May, we'll be discussing the science pilot that we're currently doing in the elementary world. The materials for both programs that we are piloting are currently on the stage. We wanted to have them out for public review for the next month or so. The teachers have been piloting two programs. They like a lot about both. So we'll be talking about the pros and cons, but I just wanted to make you aware that the materials were out and available for people to look through.
One more item. Go ahead.
Spreadsheet, the estimate that you all have in front of you. I just want to clarify, there's two line items in there for renovating the existing field house and also renovating the existing concessions. As the new field house developed, I wasn't at the last couple design meetings, and I think the intent is to do even less in the existing buildings. So Ryan, Scott, and I talked, and I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to issue an update with just an allowance. And then, you guys can determine what your how much money you really want to put into those, like that existing field house. But I think it sounds like we probably have a bit too much in there currently. Like I actually figured to renovate, and I think the consensus is more like Ryan was saying, to leave the visiting team use it a little more as is. So that the total there, that's about 1 million worth of that when you add those two up.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to take a short break before we go into our finance meeting? It's probably going to be a long meeting. So let's take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 10 after.
All right, we're going to jump into the Finance Committee meeting, and we're going to start off with a budget presentation from Mrs. Hall.
Last presentation in March, we've continued to look at the numbers, refine and revise our projections where we could. Some of them expenses had to go up because we took a good look at them to see what was actually realistic. In other cases, we found ways to do things differently and make some cuts. So I have got some revised numbers to share with you tonight. Next slide, please. You can focus on the highlighted because that is what's different, but I have left the progression of what we've done here, starting with the final 24-25, moving to the preliminary. The revised is what was presented in March and where we are today. So where we are today is left with a $2.8 million deficit, which is a 2.98% tax increase. That is assuming flat state funding and does not include millage built-in for debt service for the high school project. That'll be in a later slide. So that's sort of the current state of affairs. Next slide. As you know, this is a slide that I presented in the past. The Act 1 index for this year is 4.8, which equates to approximately 4.56 million in additional revenue if we were to go to the index. Every 1% is $950,000 based on the average household tax bill. If you went to the index, they would increase annually by $174. Some of the deficit is caused by our loss of ESSER funding at the end of September of 24. And the budget also includes the DCED grant. It includes both the grant, the revenue, as well as the expenditure to offset that we are getting to do the roof projects at LMS and LPC. Next slide. We had a slight increase to our total revenue in that we have additional money for PCCD grant. There's additional money there. So we've increased that revenue projection slightly, a couple $100,000. So that is an increase. Next slide. And then our expenditures, as you can see on the far right-hand side, some have increased, some have decreased. So we've fine-tuned those a little bit and we're able to cut out some additional expenditures there. Next slide. This is our Act 1 index chart, which does include the millage built-in for debt service. So if the index is 4.8, which it is, we balance the budget the way it is today. It's a 2.98% increase, 1.81 for millage built-in, which leaves us at a 4.79% tax increase in its current state.
Mrs. Hall,
Yes.
the projection that you have going out for 26, 27 and beyond,
Yes.
if the board does not increase to the Act 1 index this year, how, if at all, does it change what's going out in future years? In other words, to what extent is the compounding built in?
So are you talking
The
about
future projection.
the debt service projection? So those would obviously increase in out years. The debt service is what we're referring to?
Yes, primarily the debt service, but also what that would look like as we go down the road in terms of the operating budget.
So I can project that to a certain degree for staffing and things of that nature, but in terms of programs and stuff, I don't really know what is in the plan for multiple years out. But if we don't go to the index, I mean, certainly things are going to have to be cut. I think you've already alluded to that. If we don't go to the index, things are going to have to be cut further, which you've alluded to earlier.
Right.
So it depends on how much you're willing to take out of the budget. So it's hard to say without knowing where we end up now. So if we are going below the index, presumably things are then cut, right? So
I guess what I'm getting at, the debt service commitment that's listed out in 26, 27 and further,
sure, that would increase.
is that predicated on going to the index this year?
No, that is predicated on going 181 for your debt service millage. You could go less and make cuts to your general fund budget, but that millage projection is based upon going 181 this year. If we don't, then that either increases those other years or you do additional years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Mrs. Hall, that the breakdown of the debt service is what Lou and Lauren from Raymond James is recommending.
Correct. And we've already kind of pushed it out
Right.
some additional years than the initial plan because we did start last year by putting away 1.65, which that money is obviously sitting in cap reserve as we're holding that aside for future debt service. So every time we do this, we're putting that money in cap reserve until such time as we have to pay back this debt service. So we are benefiting as well, and that we have additional money to put away for the other capital projects. Next slide. Another slide that you've seen before, which is just our projection of what the tax increases have been against the index for the past 8 years or so. Next slide is the county millage rates as of today. Don't know where everyone is landing for the 25-26 fiscal year. And next slide is our tax increase scenarios. And obviously we can go anywhere in between any of those, but just to kind of give you a mark of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4.8, which is our top end, what that looks like in terms of additional revenue and what that looks like for the average taxpayer. So, I mean, at this point, we need some guidance on where we're going to go with the tax increase, because then we may have additional work to do on getting the general fund budget to where it needs to be to meet that tax increase. Justin, I don't know if you want to. Conversation.
Thank you, Mrs. Hall. So I don't know where everybody wants to start, but you can see we have a goal tonight of leaving here with providing some direction, not a vote, but some direction on this tax increase for the administration so that they have an idea of what they need to do moving forward. So that's really the goal of reviewing this, for us to come to some kind of consensus that we can vote on at some point. It's not the vote, but some kind of consensus around where we want to land with the tax increase, so we could have this on for the next board meeting as a voting item. As you can see, it doesn't look pretty right now. We don't know what the state's going to do. I guess I'll start off with my feelings about this. I've talked a lot about it. I've thought a lot about it, and I've studied it.
Mr. Can I
Yeah.
get one? Just to
Yeah, go
back,
ahead.
The debt service commitment, you don't have to call the slide back up. The 1.81, if I remember correctly, assuming everything goes on, the next next two borrowings will be $75 million each, at least the next one.
I'll look that up. I don't want to quote. 'cause I
Okay,
don't
but
remember.
that's what, and there's still be another $61 million if I did my math correct and subtracted it from. So this debt service is to cover basically the borrowing of the 75 million, probably twice.
Well, it's to cover the entire borrowing schedule.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
over the years, but. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand.
It's
You don't have to
basically
find it.
showing,
I get the idea.
basically showing that you have enough incremental tax revenue to
Right,
make
so
the
what
payment.
the-
Like if we
yeah,
had a
what-
mortgage, you'd have to show you have that.
Mr.
much
Merris.
to make the payment. Sorry.
So
So it's basically showing that you have enough additional tax revenue to cover that bond
Right, yeah.
payment.
So once
for
we're done in
those-
28, 29.
Right, right.
Whoever's on the board at that time, the 211 will be.
Correct.
So
We don't need to borrow.
to answer your
at least
question.
For the 211.
Yeah, so to answer your question, it's the 15 million that we are going to do this year. And then it's about 72 million in 26 and 27, and about 44.5 in 28.
Okay.
Can you say that again? Sure. Sorry.
15 this year.
This year.
This is roughly, because
Yeah.
I think they did it at 13,985. 72 for years 26 and 27.
Yeah.
And 44 for 2028.
Thank you.
Sure.
I did want to bring one other thing up before you start. You said in past finance meetings that there is a good chance we get additional money from the state, and approximately 700,000. We got it last year. Did we get it the year before?
No, the adequacy funding was new last year. We
Okay.
did get an incremental increase to the basic ed funding, but the adequacy piece is new because it doesn't go to all districts.
Okay, so just gut feel, you and Mr. Bremersky, do we think we're going to get that money again? If you were going to say 50-50, 70-30, do you have any feel, or is it very unpredictable?
I mean, I'll share directly from Representative Cutler and Representative Schweier, who were the majority chair and minority chair of the House Education Committee, out of their mouths in a meeting I was in just a few weeks ago. They said that those dollars while not a settled in writing agreement, is basically the understanding at the state level that that will continue because it was the proposed settlement, and so they didn't end up back in court fighting the fair funding lawsuit. Now, that's the House. You still have to also work through the Senate, and then you have the governor. So I'm hearing through various groups and other entities, and I'll be back in Harrisburg next Tuesday, having these same conversations, but the adequacy funds are what I continue to hear as, yes, this is what was promised, this is what's going to be delivered. When Governor Shapiro presented his budget, the basic ed funding and some of the adequacy dollars, it was a lower education budget in a sense that people were expecting. And what was shared with me in a variety of meetings was that was more strategy from a budget standpoint, and that everyone knows that education needs more. And so Governor Shapiro had funds that he was projecting out of the budget that were higher in other areas, which is where people are going to say, okay, we'll take from there and put to education and bring education back up. So will it come? I would say if what I heard from Representative Cutler and Representative Schweier, yes, we should be able to expect that, but it is not included in anything that has come out other than the governor's budget saying this is what he's proposing for us. It's in his proposal. They're saying yes. If they go back on that, then in my mind, they're going back on all of the discussion, and at some point probably will end up back in court over fair funding in the state of Pennsylvania again.
So my only point is this guesstimated 700,000 is not in the budget because it's not a sure thing, but I think it's a likely thing. So I think we should consider that as we're deliberating here in our tax increase.
That's fair. Thank you, Mr. Merris and Mr. Donato. I just have something opening I'm going to share, and it's really general information, but I've thought about this budget a long time and where we are today. And one of the things that I wrestled with is we have a wealthy district, as I see it, with a strong tax base, strong business presence, stronger than most districts around us. And I wrestled with the fact that we come into meetings struggling to figure out how do we upgrade our facilities, how do we pay for full day kindergarten, how do we make space for full day kindergarten that we don't have, how do we pay for the curriculum that we have in front of us, how do we pay for a high school project? And I came to the conclusion that there's got to be something that I'm missing related to the expense side. And I think recently I stumbled upon something with the help of some other board members and just asking some questions that warrants to be part of our discussion tonight. And it's not a fix overnight, but I believe it's something that we need to consider. And it's really our offerings. We've attempted to be, I think, everything to everybody, if I get this terminology right, at the high school level. We offer so many offerings. And I explained this to a few people I talked to as if I go into the restaurant and I have a menu that's 6 pages long and we're offering anything and everything, but it's very inefficient from the kitchen standpoint. Food that doesn't get used, whatever. The bottom line is to get a good meal, you don't need a menu that's 6 pages long. Sometimes a menu that's 2 pages long that's done well provides a better meal than a menu with many pages and many offerings. And so looking at the high school and how we're designed with our classes, it's a question I've asked 3 years ago. Why are we running classes with low numbers of students? And we run between about 395 and I counted as high as 414 options. And when I look at some of these, the first 160 have less than 20 children in those or students in those classes. Most of those classes have a capacity of 20 to 30. Most of them have a capacity of 30. Some have a capacity of 24. Others have a capacity of 20. So when I look at this, I begin to ask myself the question, why don't we have the money for this funding when our tax base is strong? We've taxed an average of 3.1% year over year for the past 3 years. And I'm coming around to looking at this saying, this is space, it's curriculum, and it's personnel. And those 3 things are some of our highest drivers when it comes to cost. And so as we go into this tax discussion, one of the things that I'm committed to doing is taxing as needed. But I would ask that the board provide a commitment and the administration, as part of our direction from this, a commitment to evaluate and manage expenses wisely. And if we do that, I believe that we can find way more dollars than we need and still provide an excellent education to our young men and women and students of Hempfield. And so there has got to be a better way. I don't want to be fighting over, do we have 1.6, 1.8, or 1.1 million, whatever that number is, for necessary curriculum. I don't want to be worried about $1 million for what I consider mission critical school needs. And I believe that's because we've tried to become the Shady Maple of the area. We add things, but we're not good at taking things away. And even when we don't run a class, we revive it in a different way. We bring it back with a new name, a new title, or we put it in the parking lot and we bring it back another year and we have 11 students sign up that year. If we condense what we're doing and do it very, very well, it will solve a lot of challenges that we have financially for not this board, not my time here, but for boards in the future. So I just ask that we, as we're asking the administration to make adjustments to be able to balance this budget, that this is an area of focus that we give direction around. And maybe that means us saying you don't run a class if there's less than 20 students and the cap on that class is 30. You don't run a class of 15 or less if the cap on it is 24. If we need to provide that direction as a board, then we need to have some discussions around that. This is not a short-term solution to the budget this year. This is a long-term solution to financial challenges that this district will continue to face if we don't address the expense side of things and only tackle the revenue or the tax side of things and count on the state to fix the rest of it. So I would just ask as we go into this, we consider that whenever there's open positions, if we filled that position and it's been open for 8 months and we filled it comfortably, why are we filling it after 8 months if there hasn't been a problem backfilling it? I don't know if we're doing that. It's a question I would just have, that every position be evaluated in that manner. It's what I do every day. So I'm not asking this group to do anything that doesn't have to happen in the business world. And so I would just go back to the fact that we have some challenging discussions ahead. I'm not afraid to raise taxes, but that comes with the commitment from this board and administration that we are fundamentally going to look at this in a different way moving forward. There are classes on here that we're running with 7, 8, 9. Capacity in those classes, 20, 25. One class is a cardio conditioning class. It's 10 students in that enrollment, capacity of 30. Does that class need to be there? Can it be combined with another physical education class? And can we drive those students into one that has 24 that has a capacity of 30 or 20 that has a capacity of 30? The answer to that is yes when I look at this, a resounding yes. And so I feel like we need to do a better job of managing our expenses so that we have what we need for what I consider the fundamentals, the fundamental financial needs of this district, without scraping rock bottom to try and find the last penny to figure out how we do it. I'm done, but that's all I have to say. But I would suggest that we're probably not, I don't know where we're going to land tonight, but I want each of you to speak about where you want to be and us to come to some kind of consensus around this. But I'm truly asking this board and this administration and the district as a whole, especially with this high school, to evaluate our spend that is going on related to all of our offerings. I would love to be everything to everybody. We can't be everything to everyone. It doesn't work.
Quick question before any other discussion comes in. From looking through this from a business lens, I don't disagree, right? The data that you're looking at, Justin, are you seeing that that's happening consistently each semester, each year, yeah? So I mean,
I think it's been going on a while, and block scheduling probably hasn't helped that. I mean, and that I understand that block scheduling does create some challenges there, but I also believe there's tons of capacity within block scheduling, and that we've even loosely talked about we need to look at standard scheduling the information, when you look at education, is comparable. There's not one that's better than the
Yeah,
other.
understood.
They both have their pros and cons.
Understood, but but what you're seeing is you're seeing out of all those classes or programs or whatever clubs, whatever you're looking at each year, it's kind of consistently, we don't see tons of ebbs and flows. Is that fair?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, this is the first time I've actually seen enrollment data. I've been
Yeah.
talking about running low classes, classes with low numbers for a long time. This is the first time I've actually seen it. And frankly, I'm like, this is where it is.
Yeah, I hear you.
So if I can just jump in real quick. So over the last couple of years, Dr. Brossman has been working hard to stop offering classes when there aren't enough students. And one of the challenges that we have, and we even talked about this today, is when the schedules go out to students, students have, in a sense, like college, a drop add period. So we don't start with low numbers, but students do have the ability to change their schedule. Because either they don't like the class or they fit in their schedule or they want to do something different. And so what we've been doing, and this is because of Dr. Brossman at the high school, is he's collapsing classes. So we're not offering and then kids get displaced. And so as we're looking at the schedule, one of the things that we have to look at is when you look at the teaching load, we need to have enough classes to be able to go to basically say we're not going to run, to go down. And so in order to do that, we have to decide, are we going to be the district that is going to build a schedule that's based on student requests of what we believe we need in a program? Or are we going to say, nope, this is all we're offering and you need to fit in that box? And we've had conversation here on a small scale, whether courses have come forward or we're saying, we would like to stop doing this or stop doing this or what have you. And then what we get back at times is, well, we don't want to do that. We want to keep that, or we think we should do this, or we had this back when, or what have you. So I don't think, Mr. Wogmuth, you're wrong from a standpoint of we do need some direction in terms of what is it we want to see from students' education here at Hempfield that you're supportive of. If we're going to go down the path, which we have consistently for many years have built the schedule based on student request within a framework. If we're not going to do that anymore, and we're going to say, nope, the science classes are only going to be this, the math classes are only going to be this, the ELA English classes are only going to be this, then we need to kind of know that up front, that the support is there, because what happens when we don't run a class is that we get a lot of phone calls saying, my child needs this class, or my child wanted to take this class. And then we're in this push and pull. Because then people will continue working up the chain and eventually we get well, can you make it work? Can you find a way? And that's happened over the years. And we're starting, just this semester alone, Dr. Brossman closed classes for the second semester and reshuffled teachers' assignments. When we're looking at the requests for the upcoming year, we aren't replacing all staff members in terms of open positions because the requests aren't there. And so we don't need to fill those requests. But when we do the initial schedule, and right now, as Dr. Brossman's working on it, I believe you said we're at 93%, 90% of classes that are 15 or higher on the initial build. And there's still about 300 students, ballpark, who don't have a complete schedule, who still have to be scheduled into classes. And they schedule those students in when possible on the electives of the lower enrolled classes. So they're already getting classes they don't want. When they have the drop add period, if they don't like that class, they're going to drop it and go do dual enrollment or open campus or, fill in the blank. So that's that constant ebb and flow, but we can certainly move down that path. Once you have things in the budget, we do try and work to keep it there for the year, and then we reevaluate the following year. We also try and move based on the positions that are open. So if we're going to be looking forward, as Mr. Wogmuth shared, we do look at the positions every time they come up. And some of the times that we look at that, it's obvious we can do it. Other times when we don't initially recommend to fill, you will hear about it. Because then the argument comes into play, class size is going to go up. So it's a constant ebb and flow.
And we have to be supportive of that, and I agree, Mr. Bermersky. I would tell you that when I look at this, and I don't know what I'm looking at compared, this is what was just given to me today. I mean, we have a lot of classes with 18, 19 students in it with a capacity of 30. And so I'm struggling to understand, the efficiencies that don't come from looking at this spreadsheet. Unless this spreadsheet is wrong, the data doesn't lie unless the data is wrong. There is not efficiency around driving kids to core classes or to a core group. I don't believe we can be taking our direction from parents and students related to what we offer. I think we as a district, as a board, have to provide direction around what we believe is important for students to be successful, whatever direction they go. And be willing to let go of some of these things and try not to be everything to everyone. And I think that's the key. If we try not to be everything to everyone, the rest of this is going to auto-correct itself. But whenever we move to the flavor of the day, or we succumb to the pressure of I want this, or for parents that want that, this is what you end up with over the course of time.
I think I'm sorry. I think there's just one other piece, and Dr. Rossman, you're here. I don't want to speak for you. I didn't ask you to prepare anything, but when you do work on scheduling, the other part of this is depending on the number of sections you have, the class only falls at a certain period. And so when students request that class, then they may not get other things. And then it's a constant push and pull. Is that not correct? Yep.
Correct.
Yeah. And you could certainly take the number of requests. If you have 100 requests for a class, and you're going to say you're going to put 25 kids in those classes, then you need 4 of them. That works perfectly if it fits period 1, 2, 3, 4. But the likelihood is the teachers teaching those schedules with their certifications, they may not be able to teach it 1, 2, 3, and 4. It may have to be first semester, second semester, split 2 and 2. And then you see what happens.
Right.
And so it is looking at requests, but it's also looking at the fill. And
I mean, a common situation that happens, to Mr. Wogelmuth's point, is, we're gonna run an AP course, right? And we look at the requests. 40 kids ask for that AP course. Well, you can't put 40 kids in a class. You can put 30 kids in a class. Well, okay, so now I have to run two sections of that AP course, 40 divided by 2. Now that's how you get a class size of 20 versus 30. So you just mentioned the example of all these classes at 19. Like that's just one example of how you end up with classes of 20 versus 30. So we build the numbers, we base the number of sections on the requests. We try to get it to come out as evenly as possible, because like Mr. Romersky said, depending when it's offered, might fit in more kids' schedules than others. So there's no perfect schedule where everything fits perfectly in there, because we have to give the schedule a little wiggle room to flex, to breathe, so that
I think we have to be okay with letting students in situations like that, those 10 students that don't get into that class, choose a different class and take it at a different time or a different year. And maybe we're doing too much, as I've shared before, to try to be everything to everyone, to say, okay, we're just going to create 2 classes now because we have 40, instead of saying, you know what, those 10 that didn't get that class have to choose something different.
Well, I'm sorry, just let me expand on that a little bit further. So we have the total number of teaching sections based on our staff, right? And the only time staff go away is when they retire. So we look at how many teaching sections, and then that's how we divide how many, how we divvy up those sections. So, right, if I'm going to run 2 APs to capture those 40 kids, then I'm going to run less of something else. And so that class might be a little higher. Like there's lots of pushes and pulls. And
I understand that, but when I look at this spreadsheet and I see that we're running classes with sub 15, and I counted 90, but let's say what on here says 57. I'm not sure how the number's different. That's a lot of different classes where those individual students can choose something different. And take out the fact that you have 40 on an AP class. Just set that aside for now and look at all these other classes. And I'm not picking on this one because there's many like it. Cardio conditioning. We have 10 students with a capacity of 30. All right. You can't tell me that we split that class 4 times. So when I'm looking at this, I would expect that we trim this back. And I struggle with the amount of dollars that I know are getting buried in the inefficiencies related to this. And I see why Hempfield is struggling to be able to do some of the things that I consider fundamental to education because the dollars are going somewhere and I couldn't figure out where, and I think I found them.
Okay. So, and to your cardio conditioning point, right, we certainly didn't design the course to have 10 kids in it. That's a result after some adds and drops, but that could shake out in the schedule again if you had the 40 kids and you offered two cardio conditionings and 30 of them got one section and the other kids, because they had band and this AP and that, it fit in their schedule, and those are the 10 that fit in there. I mean, I could certainly collapse that but then I got to find kids mid-year. I have to find the kids to backfill in there. So
I'm just saying this is terribly inefficient, and I'm not suggesting we swing the pendulum way over here to say that we're only going to offer 5 classes and put 100 kids in each, and I'm exaggerating, but I am suggesting that the pendulum is way too far over here with the Shady Maple Smorgasbord, and we need to bring that to center. And I believe bringing that to center will do a lot of things, including improve educational outcomes. And I would suggest that we need to start as a board to make a concerted effort to make adjustments to that. And that will find dollars, not even about the money for me. I believe it's very inefficient the way this is designed. And in effect, if we have to go to standard scheduling because of this, everyone else may say no way, but I'd be fully supportive of going to standard scheduling to help you adjust these class sizes appropriately and run what needs to get run. And if that's what you need to do it, let us know that.
yeah, I'm not looking for standard scheduling. In that situation, I'd still have 6 sections for each teacher that need filled. It's the same 6 sections, whether they're in block schedule or standard schedule, that I'm going to divide out into my master schedule to get kids into.
That won't help at all, because my understanding of standard is a lot easier to schedule when you have standard scheduling in play
You'll end up
relating
offering
to
less
this.
options.
Yeah.
Could I suggest that perhaps, maybe not get into some of these
Sure.
details. Maybe it's because we started talking about science curriculum. And so we're going to have a robust discussion at that curriculum meeting. And and I've had discussions, individual discussions myself, but I know that Judy wants to speak and Megan's about to
I have
jump
some
out of her
questions. Just
skin
questions.
over
It's
there.
so, like when you discuss it more, it brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah. So,
And we can get back to the budget piece. That's really what this is all about. But I think all these pieces are important.
yeah, so
Well, I'm not sure. I may be going down the road that everybody was going on that we're trying to stop going down, but 2 points that I wanted to make. First of all, I could be wrong, but I think you've mentioned before when we've talked about lower class sizes that some of these, there are separate classes, but they're being held in the same room with the same teacher simultaneously. Like you may have 2 levels of, whether it's the one that comes to my mind was when I was still teaching, there was a
Fashion.
sewing fashion
Yep.
class, and they were, level 1, 2, and 3 were all in there at the same time with one
Correct.
teacher. So one
Yep.
might have only been 2 kids, but you had another, 22 kids at a different level. So that might be skewing the charts to some degree. And
That's a small portion of it. You're correct.
No, have you factored
It
that
is,
in?
it is a small portion of it. I don't think it's a large percentage. Like when I looked at this list, to your point, Mrs. Brady, we have Chinese, I think it's 3 and 4 together, but that was listed as one line item on here, and there were still only 10 students in that class.
15.
15, maybe my number changed from my first spreadsheet I was given.
sheet that,
So all of you got it. I sent it to you. I sent it all to you. You
Just
have it.
now.
You have it.
Yeah, we just got.
Yep.
we-
The second thing I wanted to say too was more of a global comment is my view of high school education is that they're exploratory years for kids to discover what their interests are and to discover what their passions are and figure out what they're good at and what they want to leave behind. And that means more, a variety of offerings to meet a variety of needs and interests and levels and backgrounds. We obviously view it differently, but that's where I think in the high school setting is where they don't know yet what they want to do with their life. They have to explore, and taking those options away too drastically is a dangerous road to go down for the best outcomes for our students. So, yeah.
I would just ask each of you to look at this I'm committed to asking some other districts and asking for their information around this to do some comparisons to potentially bring back to this group. I won't have that in time for our budget decision, but one thing that is weighing on me related to this is if we're going to raise taxes year over year, and it's more than $176 a household, depending on the value of your house, and it surely is a lot more for businesses. We need to be able to also look at the expense side and be willing to let go of things. And I feel like no district, not just Hempfield, is good at doing that because everything is good. We want to offer everything to everyone. Look, if we had endless resources, I would want to do the same thing. I don't disagree with you, Mrs. Brady. Then that practical side of me comes back to the fact that we just don't have the ability to do everything for everyone at every given time. And can we find a sweet spot there related to this? If we truly believe at the end of the day, after you get a chance to look at this and I gather information that there is merit to this, I will admit to, and this is not anything I haven't said before, I believe, obviously our contract with the teachers has impacted our budget this year. That's not something we can change. So we need to overcome that regardless of what that's done for us related to our need to increase taxes this year. I'm not happy about it. Everyone already knows that, but it is what it is at this point. So I'd like to get to a place where I don't want to derail this because I really want to hear from each of you where you want to be. We really need to get to, and I don't want to rush this at all, but a place where we have direction for the administration.
And I would encourage you to reach out to Dr. Brosman. He knows the schedule very well. He has been really instrumental in the last several years trying to take that pendulum swing and bring it back. Slow, but he's bringing it back. And so reach out to him and sit with him and he'll be able to explain and go over, the questions that you have with it. So
yeah, I'll be happy to sit with you, Dr. Brosman. I want to do that. I want to walk through it line by line. I want to intimately understand it. It's that important to me, and I'll take the time to do that.
Okay.
So Megan, what?
Yeah. So when you were talking about the scheduling, and I was thinking, so when you have maybe 28 students who want to take something, is that then you creating one section with 28 students?
Well, it depends if the cap was 30,
If the cap was 30, or if the cap was, you said 24 was one. So if you had about 24, you'd be thinking one section.
Probably, depending what it is.
Because as a parent, as an educator, all my things are saying Hempfield is going to the limit in a lot of ways. When you schedule things, I know in the elementary program and in middle school program, that's also happening because I have kids in both of those levels. So although there's a spreadsheet there, in reality, I see Hempfield always pushing that limit and having large class sizes. And the example you gave of splitting 40 into 20 and 20 makes sense because that goes over that threshold. So we may have a completely different perspective on this, but I see Hempfield always pushing those bounds of filling classes and things like that. Granted, before add and drop and all the ebbs and flows and other things that happen, but that's my perspective. And so when I think about financials overall, I see it as kind of like a line, and we have over here, we have cuts and we have things we've already lost. Then we want to maintain what we have, because once you cut or once you lose things, it's very rare to get them back. And then you have goals and things you want to implement and do more of. And I'm at a place where I'm okay with the financials being at least maintaining what we have for Hempfield students and parents, because when the comment was made that we don't take direction from students and parents, and I was a teacher, believe me, I had parents calling me all the time and students telling me what they thought all the time. Those are the people we need to listen to, in my opinion. And their opinions are extremely important. So that's my specific question about kind of the ways things happen, and then my overall kind of thoughts on where we need to go.
I'm not sure what has been cut
No, I'm saying there's that area of do we cut or things we've already.
I thought you said we have already cut things. The only thing I can think of right off the top of my head is we reconfigured the theater arts class. That's the only thing I can I don't know, is there
No,
more?
I'm more
No?
speaking to when people say we're going to have to cut things or we're going to have, that's what I'm speaking to. And versus a
Gotcha.
thought of maintaining what we have and going even further.
It's not necessarily, I think the word cut is way too strong. It's not about cutting classes, it's about what I call low utilization, or what they call in the business world ROI, return on investment. If you have a small number of students and you're educating hundreds of students and only a small handful want that class, that's not necessarily a reason to run that class unless you have endless resources. And I think that's the $1 million question for us, no pun intended. We really have to decide if we want to be everything to everyone related to every offering there ever was. We will be challenged in other areas with resources, and that has to, if that's the direction the district wants to go, that's fine. My suggestion would be that we look at right sizing our use of our resources to be able and understand we don't need to be everything to everyone, so that we have dollars for some of the things that I consider mission critical related to Hempfield, that I feel like we've been scraping bottom to find. And it's unfortunate because I don't want to have to scrape bottom to find dollars for those items. These are items that I can see as wants, not needs. Some of the things we're squabbling over dollars, in my opinion, are needs, not wants. And that's where I struggle.
First, I would say, I don't see what we're doing is trying to be everything to everyone. I don't see that at all. I see that all of levels from K through 12, what can we do to provide the best quality education for our kids? What does that look like? What do we need? Instead of, I don't see that as trying to be everything for everyone. And I've talked to several of you about it. It's a philosophical approach, which may tweak and change the way you decide what we're going to do or not do. And you know, I've sat here and I'm like, don't cut art. In fact, we need another pottery wheel. I think we got one, but different things like that. Chinese, I was thinking about that today. When I was in high school, Russia, our number one enemy was the language that had to be taught. That's why Chinese is currently in. Number one trade partner, global expansion, all of that. And you know, I have a little bit of a bias towards Chinese. I can barely speak it, but I have a little bit of a bias towards that. But when you have a program where kids are going to competitions and winning,
Which we've
which
publicized on our website.
well, in China, yes, and something like that just happened in Chinese, and I'm like, we've already combined that. The teacher's already, she's also teaching some. And I have to say that I would not want to do your job. I've had to do scheduling. I would rather schedule a brigade movement in the military, which by the way, I've been part of, than do what you do. That you and the other principals and Kathy do, trying to figure out how you're going to fit these kids in and what they need when and all of that. I've talked to several of you, including Justin, how do we do that? You eliminate and concentrate. Are there some things that we should eliminate, but you know, we don't want to eliminate bare bones where we're not providing good quality. Hempfield is known to be a high quality school. And I said this the first time I spoke at a board meeting. My kids have gone to school all over the globe. This is by far the best school my kids have ever gone to, ever. I want it to keep that way. So somehow we've got to meet in the middle here with that. And I've talked about we're going to talk next time about the elementary science curriculum. I had long conversations with Doug a couple of times already about that, and a few other, well, I missed one committee member, but we're going to talk about that. But for right now, I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir. Somehow we're going to get that education at the elementary level, that curriculum that we need to get. I think we can also say, and you've had some strident defenders about, they have looked, they have combined, and talking to the high school. They've looked, they're very conscious of how the dollars, they're very, and it's a sad situation that we have to be in that position, but we do, and then we have to balance how much tax increase do we want to do? And gosh, we have a high school that, the roof's falling in and we don't have enough room for all the kids and all of that stuff. Somehow that has to come through. And I do believe it makes it easier, at least for me, to more palatable when it's like, how do we do this and still maintain quality, knowing that we're not already everything to everybody anyway. I think if we've had kids, honestly, they've gone through the program, as good as the school is, my kids have looked back and, gee, I wish I had had this, or I wish I had had that. I don't know that we've cut any programs. We still have dance theater, we still have chamber music. We've still had a lot of stuff going on. I don't know if course is where we need to look, or if we need to look at auxiliary budgets. I don't know. And we have the constraints of the contract also. So how do we do that? And we say, well, we don't want to, we have kept tax. I'm so tired of reading and hearing people go, you raise taxes every year. Do you recall that one year we did 0? And other years we've done 1%, and maybe that's why we're in the position that we're in now. My family, we're retired. We're on a fixed income. Fixed. We've got no other money coming in ever. My kids aren't rich. They're not going to pay for me. They're not going to pay for my husband. We are willing to put in what we need to do in order to support this district's education. My kids have profited from it. Our community profits from it. I think it's important. Do I want to raise it to like last time, let's go to 6.3? Absolutely not. I think there could be a middle ground here for us, or a ground that we can all agree on. But saying we're not going to buy a curriculum for our elementary kids, that's not the ground that I think we need to worry about.
You're up, Grant.
I'm done.
Schools. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, I was waiting to be recognized, but okay. All right, so I have a clarification for Dr. Brossman, and I have a broader point to make. Dr. Brossman, you mentioned there were 40 students registered for an AP class.
An example.
Or was that a hypothetical?
That was an example, like,
Well, is it an example or a hypothetical?
but it's an example of the type of situation we face in
Okay,
classes.
all right. Is there a reason some classes we could do overloads in, correct? Like if it's an AP history class, I assume predominantly lecture and paper-based, 40 students might not be ridiculous. If it's a home economics or a shop or a science class, heavily lab-based, heavily like sort of learning-based, it might not be feasible. Have we considered having larger classes when the structure of the class allows us to do so? Like, what's the largest class that you would have for a predominantly lecture-based format?
We don't run classes larger than 30.
Okay, you what?
We don't run classes larger than 30.
Why, is that an across-the-board rule, or, and is there a reason we couldn't run larger classes in certain instances?
Yeah, we don't have rooms to do that.
Well, I thought you had the LG room, they seat like 50 or 60.
You have to consider the teachers. They have to,
Right,
the
well,
teachers have to grade all of that.
I think,
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about high school honors and AP classes where the next year, these same students are going to be in college lecture classes, in some cases with several hundred.
They're in high school. It's different.
Okay,
And I
it's
would
for
say
the
a lot of
teachers.
university classes are not like that anymore. You may have 1 or 2 here or there.
to be clear, I am not suggesting that every class should have 40 students. What I'm suggesting is, or what I'm asking is, if there are certain parts of the curriculum where moving beyond that sounds like that arbitrary 30-person cap could work and not result in a pedagogical degradation of what's happening. That's my question.
Mr. Keener, I have to respond to this. I'm thinking, first of all, I hope we don't have entirely lecture classes at this point anymore going on. You know, does it happen? Sure. But to do what you're saying, to put 40 kids in the large group LGI room there, I don't think that's, hey, that's
So
not good
why
teaching.
would that not work in certain types of classes?
Because
All I'm hearing is we don't do that. No one's giving me a reason why we can't.
because that's not how teaching has evolved now, what good teaching practices are. It's not standing up there for 40, or for in this case, 80 minutes, whether it's 45 as a regular class or 80 minutes as a block.
That's not how AP, let's just start at AP. That is not how the College Board prepares the AP teachers to teach the AP classes. It is not lecture-based. It is more student-driven, teacher facilitates students through collaborative projects, working, learning, they're doing independent, they're doing small group, they're doing large group type work. I think Dr. Brossman is right.
Yeah, in our AP English classes, there's probably more grading taking place in one of those than.
No what?
AP English courses require more grading than just about any other class, like just talking about AP English, AP Social Studies courses, like the AP curriculum, it's the students are producing a lot of work. Those are some of the most intense courses to teach in our curriculum. So then to ask a teacher to max them out more to 40 kids or 50 kids or 60 kids, and then I don't know, LG2 holds 120, like where do we draw the line? I mean, right now the line is drawn at 30, and that's about as much as a classroom can hold if they're all stuffed in there.
Okay, that was my clarification question. My broader point is we're hearing a lot of talk about Pride and Hempfield's course offerings, and I agree. We've historically done a very good job here. We just sat through yet another presentation about our facilities needs and how much money we're going to spend in our facilities. It's the old adage about we can have new facilities, we can have diverse offerings, and we can have lower taxes. Pick two. Which two are important to this board, okay? Personally, speaking for myself, if I want to be sensitive to our taxpayers. This board, let's be honest with ourselves, is not representative of many of the taxpayers in this district. And we can all sit here, and we are fortunate to be able to sit here and say, oh, it's only this much of a tax increase. Okay, not everyone in this district has the ability to say that. Dare I say the privilege to say that, okay? So that's number one. Number two, we have certain facilities needs, and I don't think any of us would disagree with that. But I think we have to start thinking long and hard about need to have versus nice to have versus want to have. Because right now, we're trying to do everything for everyone. We're trying to do all the courses, all the extracurriculars, and all the facilities and keep taxes low. It doesn't work. So let's figure out what two are important to us and move forward from there.
I would disagree. We constantly take into consideration our community. Yes, am I privileged? I own a home. I have 2 cars. I have a retirement. Yeah, I got all that. My kids won't have it, but I got it. But I also am one of the people that have sat here and said, why aren't we paying our support staff more? Why aren't we doing this or doing that? So yeah, you're right. We're sitting here, we're in a certain position. I don't think any of us would deny that. But to say that we are totally ignoring and ignoring what's going on in a community, I think that is a fallacy. in this case, I think we can figure out, and I think it's part of our charge, how to do all of those things within the parameters that we need to set. And whatever the tax increase is, increase or whatever the tax rate is, we have parameters that we have to work within, and we know that. One of the driving parameters that's been pointed out is we have a huge staff. We got to pay them. We have to do take care of the healthcare, et cetera, all of those costs, retirement, all of those costs. Can we still have a quality offering for our kids? Yes. As a high school teacher, I've taught AP. I wouldn't want to teach 40 kids. I mean, I think 30 is kind of a lot for an AP class. The coursework is heavy. It's college level coursework. I mean, but I think at the bottom line, what we're asking, and this would include you, Justin, how can we take care of the needs? You talk about, do we need a new high school? Do we need? Yeah, well, as long as we're going to build it, let's make sure it's what we need. So we have a need there because we need to take care of our physical plants, our physical property. We have education needs of our kids. We need to figure that out. We need, and what was the other one? The tax? And then how can we do that? And with the parameters that we've been given through Act 1 and that we don't want to go that high. I don't want to go that high. I don't want to go to 4.8. So how can we do that? We've done that for a long time, and we put up a good, healthy reserve. We've taken care of our staff. We've had lots of offerings. We have great extracurricular activities. And maybe we need to, do some cuts and look again at things. I think we can figure out how to do it.
I've said this before, and I think it sums up what you're saying. It's about balance. And the balance comes from balancing the tax increase, that you're not just taxing people. The balance comes from looking at the high school project and saying, we're going to keep parts of it and do the best we can to not spend too much on that project and be fiscally responsible. And the balance comes from looking at operations. And the operations in this case are our spend on our education programs and in the classroom. The capital dollars are our spend on buildings and those things that we need to house our staff and our students. And so I don't look at them just as one bucket all the time. Sometimes I'll put them in a little bit of two buckets when I look at that, as one-time costs versus our operation costs. But I believe that if we're willing to balance this and we don't posture up and say, no way, we're never, ever, ever going to take anything away when it comes to offerings because we need to be everything to everyone, or we're just going to tax to the hilt, or we're going to build the Taj Mahal at the high school. I do believe there's a balance in all of these that can work. But if you don't want to touch one aspect of this, whether that's expenses, revenue, or your capital projects appropriately, yes, you're going to have to do what Mr. Keener said. And that's, you're going to have to pick some and bite the bullet on the one you can't do.
I'll just kind of sum up a little bit. For me is I think Mr. Keener's correct. We got like 3 priorities, right? So we got to kind of average that. And I think this also is the budget meeting. So I think personally, I think it's a great discussion to go move forward for the next meeting. But I think we've put a long-term plan for our buildings. We're working on that. Now we need to do a long-term plan for our education, because that's what we're here for, is educating. But I think we do have some opportunities. I think the college and the classroom is awesome. Like, we should put a strategic plan on how we're going to look at education moving forward. I think we should, I think we need a lot more information. Like, what's the average class size in the district compared to every other high school in the area? What does other high schools offer? What's our offerings? How do other people do it? Like, compare, because I do think we need to put a long-term plan for our education in that to balance those 3, because we have to balance all 3.
And do you think we can do that?
Has to be a long-term plan. We have to look at everything, and when you balance all 3 are not going to be happy, Because if everybody's happy, there's no balance.
I have a couple questions that I just like clarification on regarding the numbers that have been presented. Is the science curriculum, whichever one we choose, is that included in this budget? A new science curriculum, is that budgeted in here in your recommended budget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was that question.
So.
You said yes, Mrs. Hall. Did she say yes?
Yes.
Yes, but let me just put,
Somebody just said yes.
I want to put a caveat to that, yes. What we did, were you gonna,
Go ahead.
No.
You
No, no, all you,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
after you,
Mrs. Hall, go.
is that for you?
So yes, it's in there, but it has been scaled back, which if you would like to speak to that.
Yes, so I want the board to, so what we are looking at doing is, as Dr. Dandridge shared, there's 2 programs over there. What we're hearing from teachers right now is potentially looking at a split use of materials based on grade spans.
Okay.
And based on content. So for example, one of the programs over there is not offered in 6th grade. So we have to use the other program to begin with. If you do a combination, what we are looking at, because we're hoping to do training in August, we're looking at using some existing dollars in this year's budget to purchase those training materials and some of those pieces now, so we have them for June, which we work the budget in a sense to do that
This is current year. Unspent.
assuming that we're moving with a program. And then we reduced the 1.8 million that was put in based on new quotes that we have. We took off what we would buy this year still. And then we also then looked at what was remaining and we reduced the budget for next year by that amount.
But it's covered.
So it's covered by doing a little bit now and the rest, but that's how we brought down some of those numbers.
Okay, great. Other question is, in the budgeting, as far as our staff costs go, have we reduced total staff numbers at all based on attrition with retirements?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell me how many positions that is?
I think it's 4. It's 4.
Is that across the district?
Yep.
Throughout, okay.
Teaching positions.
And what does that do to our average class sizes then? I mean, as we're on that conversation, is that affecting that? Is that?
We're still working within our parameters or, the guidelines we've been using at the elementary versus as well as the high school.
A couple other questions here. What will we do if we're assuming flat funding? What are things that won't happen with flat funding that might happen if we do get that extra money from the state?
Are you referring to the adequacy dollars?
Yeah. Or any increase in state funding over what our general funding was last year?
Does that also include federal?
I can answer the adequacy dollars. We would use, and basically right now, the budget for staffing for expanding the kindergarten program, we would use the adequacy dollars to offset those salary and benefits. So that would be that kind of swing of those dollars, which means the dollars in the budget, then we'd be able to put back into capital projects or other needs.
Yeah,
Or
I mean-
probably a reserve because it's a very tight budget.
We have no budgetary reserve and we've been very tight with the budget. So I'm afraid to get new funds and say, oh, now we're going to do X, Y, and Z. I don't think that is wise.
Okay.
And is it because those adequacy funds can only be used for certain things?
Yeah, there's a wide
So it's,
list,
which,
Right,
yeah.
okay.
but, yep.
I guess bottom line, we look to you for helping build a budget and craft the numbers. Can you offer a recommendation? What is your goals or wishes? What do you feel is the best fiscally, educationally?
I mean,
I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot there, but I mean, I think we look to the admin to deliver on what we say they need to deliver on. I'd like to know what they feel would provide the best deliverable.
That's a fair question, I think, Mrs. Brady.
Sorry? I'm addressing it to Mike.
Yeah, so,
It's a,
Mr. Graham, can you pull up Mrs. Hall's budget?
that's a fair
Okay.
question, but I was thinking it might be helpful if some of us share where we feel like we need to be. I feel like putting the administration on the spot, and none of us have shared yet. might be, I do definitely would want to hear from you.
I'm gonna share that with the point of, we need to hear from you.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I was going to say.
So
Well,
I
then why don't we
answered-
just take it
yeah.
back to the board and hold that question if that's okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll start off by sharing. Listen, I landed between 3.5 and 4. That doesn't balance the budget. I would rather be at the 3.5. And I'm going to tell you, I am willing to go higher to 4. It was my ceiling. If on one contingency, and that is that there is a concerted effort to reduce expenses and not run classes that have low numbers like so many do in here. If there's not a concerted effort to do that, I'm hesitant to give the 4%, knowing that this is just going to continue to bleed dollars long into the future. I would then give less and say, figure it out. I would rather be able to say, I'm willing to take the taxpayers for more money if we have a concerted commitment from this board to set some limitations on how many classes we're going to run so that we're not just addressing the taxpayers with revenue increases, we're addressing the expense side of the district as part of that overall balance and plan to be fiscally sound well into the future. So those are my cards.
If I could, if the board's okay, I would like to answer something that Mrs. Brady had asked by showing you something and then turn it back to you for your discussion and going around and hearing from everybody, if that's okay. So Mike, can you pull up slide 5, please? Make it a little bigger so everyone can, slide 5, and just make it a little bigger so everybody can see it. So if you look at the third from the bottom, other expenses. So in 24, you see 19 million there. Mrs. Hall, correct me if I'm wrong. That was where we had an additional 5 million that year built in.
No, that's in cap projects.
No, but didn't we move money in?
I think it was 23. I think we
Okay,
moved the
so
fund.
either way,
Yeah.
when you look at that number in 24 with the actual budget, that other expense line item, that's everything in terms of building budgets, maintenance, athletics, technology, textbooks, curriculum, that's it. And so when you look at that line item budget, it continues to go down because that's the area that we can look at to kind of pull away. There is the area of salaries and benefits. While it keeps going up, that's because of agreements, etc. All that said, we do and have not filled positions based on retirements or resignations. As we've evaluated them, say, is this possible? Is this possible? We're looking at schedules. Can we make it work? Can we make it work? Yes or no? Transportation, special ed, tuition, debt service, those are all committed things, contracts, like you're not changing. And so when you look at it, it's salaries and benefits or other. And other has gone down significantly. And we're at the point where, Mrs. Brady, to your question, what's next? What's next is actual positions of people working here today. That's what's next. And so from a budget discussion standpoint, Mike, then if you can go back to slide 6. If there's serious commitment for the high school project, you will have to build that debt in. And so the Act 1 index, looking out, while it's a guess, because they don't push it out that far, we don't expect it to go up. And so we need to know from you as a board, just how I'm getting back to the question where you're, what your comfort level is now and also in earlier conversations moving forward. If there's serious commitment on the high school project, what's that upper number of the increase to balance the budget? Because there's always going to be an increase. So what's the commitment? We need to know what that is in order to bring you things back. But we're done at the point of being like, we can take 25,000 here, 10,000 here, $100 here. You know, some of the examples of things we reduced, and I do want you to know some of the things that we pulled out of this one. We adjusted things on the curriculum. We had another position that we pulled out to say we don't need it from a filling standpoint at this point. Once it's out, it's out. If we see our enrollment numbers pop up, That's an expense that we don't have in the budget, so that's gonna come out of the reserves. The enrollment projection company, we stopped that for next year because we have enough to be able to use for the high school project, and we have enough information to kind of build off of for another year or two and maybe bring them back in a future year. Using professional services to support our English learners, we have the ability to be able to use additional staff that as we looked at schedules to fill that hole. Furniture, scaling that back in terms of trying to replace desks in schools. We had money aside for that. We cut that back a little bit. Technology equipment, not replacing, looking at book purchasing across the district, scaling that back slightly. All of that got to about $742,000 that we needed to scale back because there were other things that were added based on wages and things that we're trying to get as accurate as we can. Mrs. Hall, Mrs. Marchese are working hard to go line by line through that budget to say we want it to be as exact as we can. And so this is a very tight budget moving forward. And I will say kudos to both of them and their teams for getting it to that point. But we are at the point where it's not finding 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 here or there. It's actual positions that people have it today, and it's programs that we will not be able to run moving forward. I'm not here to say the sky is falling because we are in a good position financially as a district, but we do need to know moving forward, if we are doing the high school project, that 2.98 to cover the increase of $156,000 budget is a relatively small number. Yes, adding the debt on top of that is a lot, but you can't do a $210 million project without increasing taxes in some way, shape, or form. So with that, we need guidance from you.
We need to hear from some of the other board members, but you had my guidance. There's a lot of things we're running that I completely believe that are just burning dollars.
I'll jump in. I'll be quick. For me, historically, I've been on frankly, the minority vote for the last several years of where the tax increase should be. I'm not a fan of large increases. Do I think we need to go to the 4.8? No, I don't. Do I think that we need to build in millage and make sure that we are being prudent with what we do? Yeah, without question, right? I think we beat that horse to death 73 times. My comfort level, personally, if I'm going to throw out a number, my comfort level is right around the 4 range. That's where I've kind of been for a little while as I've looked at probably all the same documents you all have. So could I go a little bit lower? Sure. Could I go a little bit higher? Sure. For every 0.2 of a point on our tax increase, it's about $190,000 if my math is right. So I can swing that either way, depending on how on what the will of the board is, and if I'm coaxed into it. But right now, for me, an even 4 is about where my comfort level is. And I do take into account, other factors that none of us can control. Uncertainty in the market. I think about that, and Mr. Wogan alluded to this briefly, but the businesses that also are in our district, things like that. There's a lot of ripple effect that happens even with a little bit of increase or a little bit of decrease. So I do consider all those things as well. So it's not just the households I look at. It's what happens to those businesses as well, and then what are they doing to me as the consumer. So a lot of different things I take a look at while trying to balance the budget, while taking a look at what we have upcoming, debt service, future projects, et cetera. So again, 4 is where I'm comfortably sitting at the moment, which is higher than
I'm concerned that by not doing the 4.8%, what will be cut? What do we lose? We can't afford, we can't balance the budget pretty much by not going to 4.8%. So what do we give up?
And I'm concerned about future planning. We've talked about that a lot. We've seen these Act 1 index numbers over and over again. They're only going down. We have it's 1.81 to 1.77, but it's a consistent debt service commitment because of the capital projects we know coming. So I'm just trying to set us up.
Additionally, I don't know that we'll ever get to a full day K, ever, for everyone, if we don't build that into our future planning now for buildings. Buildings
In
and just
space.
general staff numbers.
Staff,
yeah.
curriculum.
Sure, but if we don't have the space, we gotta have.
All of
the
it.
space first.
If we were to, if we were to value engineer the high school project to the tune of 5 to 10%, what would that do to the debt service commitment over the next 5 years? And how would, so let's say we value engineer it by 5%, that would take 10 million off the price of the project. If we do 20 million, it would take, if we do 10%, it would take 21 million off. What would that do to the debt service commitment? And in turn, how does that lower what tax increase we would need? I know that's, I mean,
That's a loaded question. It obviously would decrease it.
Pardon me?
It would obviously decrease it. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly how
No,
much. I mean, that's something I can ask our financial.
Yeah, I'm
advisor
not
to
asking you to
project.
like,
Yeah.
if you can drop them into a cell and get an answer, that would be awesome, but I'm not expecting that. Right now, I'm thinking 3, maybe 3.5%.
I feel like we already made the commitment of the 211 million and we put it out to the community and
We haven't committed to anything yet.
I didn't say we voted on it. I said we committed to it. We had presentations. Our committee chair of buildings and grounds gave a presentation saying we could afford it. So I'm just saying what has already happened.
I'm not gonna say crunching numbers on the fly is my gift. So what is the difference? Just going back to the average household, I realize we're taking businesses into account here. What is the difference in an annual payment between 4 and 4.8? Is that on that spreadsheet?
It's on there. It's slide 10.
Keep going, keep going, keep going. Oh, missed it. Annual tax.
10.
So we're talking what, like a 20?
There,
Wait, what's
$30
difference? 4 to 4.8.
Yep.
Right, right.
$29.
So is it worth roughly $30 for the average household income
I
to
think,
balance our budget?
yeah, and I think you know this, because I don't want to restate the obvious or sound ridiculous, but that's on a 197 valued home.
Yep.
And we just have to keep that in mind, because that's an average and we have to have something to work off of, but
I agree. And then you multiply it based on your home's
You
worth.
scale it.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think about the people that rent in our district and, we think, okay, we're taxing somebody that owns a home. But when that tax goes up for that homeowner passes that on through rent. So we are hurting the little guy every time we raise taxes. They're not immune from the tax increase. And so I get really sensitive around the fact that I know a lot of people don't get more than 2 to 3% increase in their wages, and they're only making 20 to 25 an hour to start with. And yet we're going to raise their taxes on the house that they might be renting or that they might own enough that it eats up the majority of anything plus some year over year. And so I am sensitive to that. And I come back to the fact that if we're going to raise taxes, we also, and I've never changed this, we also need to be willing to reduce expenses appropriately. And I'm not suggesting swing the pendulum over to offer one class. I'm exaggerating. Please don't get panicked. But I am suggesting that we are offering way more than we need to make our kids successful to leave this district educated and ready to go. And if we can tackle both of these, we don't need to go to the index every year, but we need to tackle things like this. Will that naturally reduce staff? Will that naturally reduce curriculum needs? Will that naturally reduce space needed? Yes. but it's a practical matter that makes a ton of sense. And most districts, I would bet, and I don't know this yet, but I'll find out. I would bet that we're offering more than any other district in Lancaster County, probably even Manheim Township.
I think you said it well when you said return on investment, and I think of that. So I think of our community members, and I think of the community members all across our district in all different areas. And I think the return on investment of our kids, our community, is worth it. I mean, I wrote that really big on my notes, return on investment. And so that $30 per median assessed value for renters, for multiplied for your home's value, return on investment, I think big picture, I think long-term.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would agree with you, but there's also a lot of people that I think, to your point, Mr. Keener, aren't in our financial position that sit around this room and that would struggle with a $30 bill because they're living paycheck to paycheck. So I disagree.
I don't think we should assume.
I'm sorry.
I don't think we should assume each other's, I don't know what the word is. When Mr. Keener first said it, I don't think we should assume each other's, I don't even know what.
Resources?
Resources.
I'm
Yeah.
taking a wild guess because no one seems to be concerned about the increase, that it's not a problem for most of us at the table.
No, again, it's return on investment.
Yeah, that's it. When you look at ROI, you look at building space, you look at all those things. This is not good return on our investment dollars.
And Mrs. Hall, whenever you do get a chance to crunch that, I think certainly I would be interested in knowing it, and I imagine my colleagues would be as well.
Sure, I can ask our financial advisors to reproject that out.
Okay, thank you so much.
So first off, I appreciate all the work the done on the budget. When you look at year after year, our expenses and stuff, we haven't increased the expenses. We actually have cut a lot in a lot of areas, right? And you, like Mr. Murky said, there's a lot of, boils down to personnel costs, transportation costs, and special ed costs. So we struggle with having any type of ability to control. So yeah, I do appreciate that. And this budget, we have done some things for education. We've increased full day kindergarten for the ELK. Is that right? Did I say?
EK, the EDK.
EDK, thank you. By 3 times. We have looked at long-term plan for the buildings. We haven't done that plan, but I think to Ms. Walgen's perspective also is we need a long-term plan for our education and what we're looking for and what that dollar looks like long-term for the budget as well. So I do think that, there's all kinds of avenues to look at it, and the businesses will get hugely impacted by these tax increases. I mean, most of our commercial properties in this township are not paying $30. We're talking thousands of dollars, if not multiple thousands of dollars. So I kind of come up with, in my head, looking at the budget and everything else, we have committed to 3.5 is what we had designed when we started this building project. That was our base where we're going to add to from year after year is where we're at. So my head starts at 3.5, and with some of these increase of costs, I'm willing to go above that, but I'm not willing to go above 4. I'm not even sure if I'm willing to go to 4 just to balance all of the needs of every stakeholder we have. So it's kind of where my head is.
I'll go.
Who didn't share? Yeah, Mr. Donato, I think,
Okay.
Mrs. Johnson.
First question, if we decide on a figure less than this and at the next board meeting, because we have to vote for the preliminary budget, Mr. Boberski comes back with a list of cuts, are we going to be willing to support that list the way it is? Because we have to make that decision. And I'm sorry, I guess just hearing the discussions over the years, I think that's going to be very difficult. I'll use my teacher's voice, but I'll speak.
That's much better, Mr. Donato. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll start again, Mr. Keeter. If we don't go to that index, are we going to be able to support the cuts that Mr. Boberski would have to make. And let him make the cuts and not say, well, I don't think we should be cutting this, or I don't think we should be cutting that. Let's go cut this and let's go cut that. I don't think this board can do that. The other part I look at this, I have to go back to something with the high school too. One of the things, even before that we talked about with the high school, was discipline and things. I think Dr. Rossman, is it perfect? No, but you're dealing with kids. It's never going to be perfect. If Dr. Brosman could figure that out, I want to be his manager when he goes around the country to do presentations to every high school in the country to do that. Some of these things, when you go into, yes, scheduling is difficult. It's very hard to do. I did it at a middle school level. I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to do at a high school level with all those different things. You know, when you talk about class size, I know they've been cutting because I've been talking to Mr. Boberski. I know he's been combining classes to do that, to do those things. I guess I also look at this like last year we needed 1.85, and that included semester funds. They've cut a lot. If you think it went from 1.85 to 2.98, that's basically 1.13%. So that's about $1 million more, a little bit more than $1 million. Now we're talking about cutting back the high school. I didn't think the plans we came up with were Taj Mahal High School to do that. I mean, we're using half of the building still. It's going to be renovated, but we're still using it to be Gaddon House. We knew this was coming. Every presentation Mrs. Hall gave for budgets showed this and showed what was coming up. Other school districts do this. They put in money to do the renovations, and it goes up. We knew this was coming. I guess I don't want to do this, but if you're going to do this stuff, I guess you've got to, you got to bite the dust. If you're going to start cutting back from high school now, we might as well not do it. So I guess at this point, I'll go with the 4.8 because I think we made the commitment to the high school and to do that. And I know Mr. Boberski's made lots of cuts. And I don't believe we as a board, if he has to come back because we decide on 4 and 3, we're going to sit there at that public meeting and debate the cuts. Because some of us aren't going to like some of the cuts that will occur.
Mrs. Johnston?
4.8.
I don't know if I said it clear.
Yeah, you said it clearly. You said it clearly earlier. I think we had everyone. Mr. Merris, I think, may come back, but he wrote down his thoughts for me. He said he's at 3.8 tax increase. He's still hoping for 700 from the state and projects a $244,000 deficit. He would like to pull money from the fund balance to cover that, which is dangerous. And I already told him this, so he won't mind if I say it, because you're taking from your savings account to cover operations. But that's his suggestion. And then he said he would go as high as potentially 4% as a possibility. So leaving a small deficit as he projects, but he's counting on money we don't have currently as part of those projections, and then would suggest that we backfill that from fund balance.
Mrs. Hall, just because it's not on this presentation, if we go 4.8, do we not have a surplus then according to the current budget?
I'm sorry, we're going to have a surplus at the end of this year?
No, if we go to 4.8.
0.01% deficit.
Yeah, it's going to be really small because we're at 4.79
That's
right now.
flat. Yes,
it's flat or a little bit above, correct?
It's very slightly and doesn't include any additional state revenue.
Right.
So we could.
So we could be 700,000, according to Mr. Merris, when he was saying that 700, we could be 700,000 overtaxing them by 700,000 if we go to the max.
We could.
According to our
I-
budget.
I do want to state again, this is a really tight budget, so I feel like even at 4.8, 4.79, that additional money is going to come into play. If we get any expenses we're not expecting,
And
we're going to use it.
I would say $700,000 sounds like a lot,
It's
but it
not.
does not go very far from what I've gathered from all of these presentations. It's lovely, but
And if we don't get it, we have never included
Yeah, we don't even.
state
appropriate-
funds or federal funds in our budget for good reason.
Excess, we've
Well,
always flat
projected.
funded.
Because they never existed
Because
before.
they never finalize it
Flat
before we have to
funded.
finalize.
So
So I think we have an idea where everybody is right now. I do want to point out one thing, and I forget what slide it is. I think it's the slide that has on here the budgeted, the proposed final budget. And if you look at the salaries and benefits, and I think you'll look at those going back to 2024, 25, 26, and the proposed for 26, you'll see that the salaries alone have gone up about $7 million in those 2 years. You'll also see the benefits have gone up about $4 million. There's $11 million. That's the heartbeat of the challenge right now. If you want to know where the largest bucket is, it's right there. And there's no point in mincing words when you look at the fact that that's $111 million of our budget. It's probably a little bit now over 70% of our budget. I know we say it runs around 70%. I would suggest that's probably higher. I understand we've been trimming based on the fact that we might have a retirement and we might not fill that. I honestly don't believe that's enough when I see these numbers climbing at that rate. That's why I would suggest that we need to be a little more intentional about looking at what kind of classes we're running and why we're using additional staffing to run additional classes with low numbers in them is highly inefficient. And it would help to right-size some of this. But when you're going up $11 million in 2 years and our tax increase for 1% is about 900 and some thousand, you can understand why we're struggling to keep pace. That's where the problem is, right there. That's the rub.
I do just want to be clear, though. In order to do any of those changes, it's either open positions or furloughing staff as we get forward. So that's why we look at when positions are open, where are they and what can we go down? I will tell you, and as Mr. Donato shared, I do have things ready to share with you depending on what you're going to give us in terms of feedback. But I would implore you to be very careful because the moment I share this, it is going to create a major tailspin going on that's not going to end well and cause a lot of upheaval and disruption within the district at the end of the school year. Not to say that there should not be discussion around how do we curb those costs or whatnot, but if we go down this path, there is no going back. And I just need you to be aware of that moving forward. And I don't want to be in the position of, well, what about this, or what about this, or what about this? We have looked at this from a standpoint of trying to, it's not really the right word, there is no good, to minimize the impact, but it's an impact no matter what. And everyone will have and see a major impact to what we have as a result. And so you just need to be mindful of that.
But there's also a point where we don't have to raise tax, and we don't have to technically cut anything either. We could raise it, we don't have to raise it the whole way and still not cut. Because we do have potential, like, we
Yeah,
don't know,
so-
right? But we have the
so
700,000.
hypothetically, so if we were to do the budget, I heard a lot of fours. So let's just say hypothetically on a 4, Mrs. Hall, I'm spitballing this, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
it's really.
If we get about the 680,000 of adequacy funds, that's a little shy of the 0.8 ballpark.
Yeah, it's been close.
So if you went to 4 and banked on adequacy funds, and if we didn't get them, you'd have to pull out a reserve, recognizing that that's gone because it's a one-time fund, and then moving forward, you got to recoup that somehow. And that's going to be through
cuts,
savings through cuts.
But that's also a long-term play, right? If we look at the long-term education and how we're doing that, but if we get those adequacy funds, we're only what, $200,000 short?
Maybe a little less than that.
Maybe a little less.
than that.
little less.
Less.
So I also look at just if we don't go to the max, we still, we're not saying we have to cut right now.
As long as you're willing to
I agree.
use fund balance in hopes of adequacy funds, and if without the adequacy funds, it's fund balance. Because Mrs. Hall will have to do the initial budget report to the state where it's using fund balance. Is that correct?
Yeah, you cannot submit unless, I mean, I don't want to overstate our state funding and we can't submit something that doesn't drive.
Yep. I mean, theoretically, you could assume you're getting the additional revenue. We have never budgeted that way, and I don't recommend it. You could, but it's not advisable.
Mr. Bobrisky, could you clarify also, let me backphrase, if cuts are necessary, you can't just piecemeal cuts. It has to be a program chunk, is that correct? You have to eliminate a program, or can you piecemeal positions?
If you're eliminating a program, it has to be a program. If we're starting to go down the path of, in a sense, furloughing, which is what it would mean.
Right.
There are provisions and ways to do that, limited ways, in order to basically have to do some checkerboarding and domino effect to determine how you can make that happen. So there would be ways initially without doing a full program, but you're going to get to a point where you're out of that, and then you have to go programs.
It's very not palatable. I don't know if that's the proper way to say that. I can't, I don't think any of us would do our own household budgets on money we weren't sure we were going to get. We would have things that were the maybes. Those would be nice if we got that bonus at the end of the year, but we wouldn't commit to a rent or a mortgage or a car payment or the non-negotiables on money we didn't know we had coming in. That's not the way you build a budget. And I just cannot approve of building this budget, keeping our fingers crossed that we'll get that much money from the state. And even if we do, it's not enough.
I don't disagree with you, Ms. Brady. I think in this situation, if there's this concerted commitment to really take a hard look at some of the things that we talked about on the expense side, I could give the grace to say we'll pull from savings for 1 year if that doesn't come through. But if that becomes a year-over-year situation, it's a death sentence financially. So I don't disagree with you. If I knew that we could do this for 1 year and take that risk of 4% is a reason that's my ceiling, because I'm willing to take that risk this year because I don't feel good about going any higher. In fact, I'd like to be lower because I feel like we have not done, and I'm not trying to be negative, and this is really a board issue, not anything else. I feel like as a board, and I take responsibility for this, maybe for not doing a good job of providing what we believe is direction around what I call an appropriate consolidated, not just appropriate consolidated direction around class size and what things we want to focus on as far as our high school education goes. And I believe that's something that we as a board need to do moving forward. And knowing that this buys us another year with a little bit of risk, I can take a little bit of risk this year, knowing we need to address this in future years to get this right size. But it does buy us some time. It does incur a tiny bit of risk. I don't think it's a risk that's going to cripple us. And so that's why I'm okay trying to balance not going to the index, trying to come in a little bit lower, knowing we're going to tackle some of this. And we need to tackle some of this.
I think kicking the can down the road, I know that term gets used a lot, but when you're saying we can tackle it in future years, I'm trying to find the slide here. When you look at what the forecasted Act 1 index is in the coming years, our ability to do that is continually going down.
And we had
our
some,
costs are only going to go up.
we had some exceptional expenses too. Was it the science program, 1.8 million? We had the drivers having a significant raise. So we had some big bumps this year. So
Wit and wisdom was tied into some of that. I mean, we spent a lot of money on a lot of things for the district.
There were other funds like ESSER funds also contributing to that, which have dropped off and are not coming back.
Well, yeah, and that's why I cautioned when we had the ESSER funds, and this was before you would have been on the board, that those are one-time monies. So don't invest them in things that become an ongoing cost or you fall off a cliff financially. And I had shared that at multiple meetings around my concerns prior to maybe some of you being here, that the ESSER funds have to be looked at as one-time dollars, not investments in personnel and things that are the gift that keeps on giving moment.
didn't do that.
We didn't do
didn't
that.
do
It
that.
Well, shame on us for not doing that
I
because I
think Charles
preached
wants to
it.
speak. I think Charles wants to speak.
What's that? I apologize for skipping out. I had an important religious service I had to go to, so I hurried back. Mrs. Brady, were you talking about if we go to 4.8 and we don't assume the 700,000? Is that kind of, okay, so I don't think it's the same as our bills at home. And quite frankly, if we're likely to get that 700,000, my estimates would show that we're going to have a $700,000 excess. And that's not fair to put that on the taxpayers. So if that happens, then we've overtaxed our taxpayers. And I don't think that's the right thing to do because we don't have to get that much. And it sounds like the money's very likely. We have a unassigned fund balance, 11,371,149. We have to dig into that a little bit. That's not horrible. It's at 7.26%. The max allowed is 8%. So I don't think that's a bad risk.
I think it's a worse risk than the 0.8%.
I'm just gonna say that no matter what, I'm not in favor of any type of furloughs, and the reason that's being brought up, I don't think we should even be considering that brought up because there's other ways to do it. If we look strategically long-term, that's the long play, right? How we handled this year is not by furloughs, not by any of that. I mean, theoretically, way before that we get to that, the science curriculum could be pushed off 1 year, right? So there's other things, and I don't want to do that either, but I'm not willing to raise it to 4.8.
Think we have a bit of kind of an interesting consensus around here. I don't know if people have more comments, but I don't think we're probably going to change each other's minds on where we are. We've all spent a lot of time thinking about this. Mr. Keener's between 3 and 3.5. I think we have 3 people that want to go, 4 people that want to go to 4.8. Mrs. Johnston, Mrs. Brady, Mrs. Eshelman, and Mr. Donato want to go to the index. And then we have at least 4 of us that are at 4% max, and that's our ceiling. So I guess, Mr. Keener, we need a little help because you're the wild card. You're lower than everyone else right now. So, I mean,
You have to look
are
for
you
somebody
willing
that's
to?
at 4 and
are
say
you-
they're the wild card.
Are you willing to come up to the 4% or maybe the
No.
4.8?
I'd like to see what Mrs. Hall comes back with, what a little bit of value, and I am committed, Mr. Donato, just so you know, I am committed to the high school project. I have come around, I was reluctant about it. I have come around with the idea that it's something positive that we need. I also would like to go through the exercise of value engineering and saying, if we lop off 5% or 10%, we still get most of what we want. And right there, I think that gives us back 18 basis points. That gives us back 18 basis points this year, and that's going to propagate through over the next 5 years. That's going to give us a little bit of play. That coupled with some expense management, a little bit of a revenue side, I think we can do this. But I'm not willing to jump right to above 3.5% until I see the results of that.
So I think we could safely say, though, for the district standpoint, that it's going to be anywhere from 3.5 to 4.8%. So that gives you a floor at least to work with.
So Mrs. Hall has to have things ready for the May board meeting.
I do, but it can change before it's approved in June.
Right. And so
So
that, because the budget has to be out for review and whatnot. So Mrs. Hall, does that give you enough information to do that preliminary proposal to bring for the board to vote on, even though there's a wide range of that percent of revenue potentially coming in?
Well, I mean, I think we would do the budget, that's taking it from reserves. I don't know how else you would do that at this point.
Unless I'm coming with other lists.
Right, but you can't, you're not gonna do that now.
Mr. Olvich,
It's
to your
already
paper, you cannot do that
scheduled.
this coming year. The schedules are already being.
Correct. That's why I suggested that I'm willing to backfill it for a year. But if we have a commitment to making an adjustment to that, I know at least in the future, there's some savings there. Like I look at, you talked about, Mr. Keener, about a slight decrease of 5% in the capital project for the high school. I look at that $111 million year over year. A 2% decrease in that is $2 million plus. 2%. And to find 2% in that, it feels like that should be something we're able to do, especially when I see how many classes we're running with well under 15 students and many that are under 10.
I think realistically, Mr. Walkemuth, I think the answer is all of the above. I think we shave a little bit of money from some of the facilities plans. I think we look a little bit at efficiencies in the curriculum. And I think we look a little bit on the revenue side. I mean.
No, I think that's fair. And that's what I've been saying all along. It's about finding that balance there.
I'd like to just remind everyone that we've been hearing proposals about the potential for future full-day K in the years ahead for everyone. That takes more staff, and that takes more buildings. We'll never get there.
We will, because here's what I tried to say earlier. That's what I mean when I talk about mission critical items. Mrs. Brady, I want to be able to fund that because I know how important it is. I was part of that decision in a past board life. It was important to me, to the district, to the community as a whole. There'll be a few people that didn't like it, but we know it's good for education. That's why I want to be able to say we can't just keep adding staff, but if we're willing to look at reducing somewhere else so we can add somewhere else, that helps us in those areas. I'm not looking to cut things so we can put more money in somebody's pocket. I'm looking to adjust where we're spending in areas that I believe we have opportunity so we can shift those dollars and those resources for staffing in areas where we believe we need it.
And that's why I think we should take advantage of the Act 1 index while we have it, because it's going to go down so that we're not dipping into those reserves, which we're going to need for other things in future years. So to miss that opportunity, as on slide 7, we have done year over year over year over year. We have not taken advantage of, even on very low index years, we haven't met that index. We've missed it for year after year, and we're digging ourselves out of a hole now to fix what wasn't fixed because we didn't raise taxes.
I disagree with that 100%.
Well,
I don't think we dug ourselves in a hole. 70% of the community don't have kids in the school. There are people that are on fixed incomes. There are people that are struggling. We have to think about the tax increase and think about those people too.
I
It's not-
understand that.
And I don't think the goal is to go to the index every year. That's not the goal.
But we've
Is that your
never-
goal?
No, but I'm looking at the last since
But
2017.
Mr. Merris, and I was part of this too, because I voted for low tax increases. Part of the problem with the high school is previous boards did not look at
That
the
didn't
high
make
school.
any difference. You're not going to get it 210 million by raising to the index over the past 15 years. You
No,
have
but we
all
could
the
have,
money.
but we could, I totally agree with you, but we never, part of the problem is we didn't set money aside. We did set money aside. For
We didn't
salary.
strategically plan. We needed to borrow money. If you look at the tax increases over the past 15 years, which I've been on the board, there was very, very little difference between, the index was much lower. That was tiddlywinks compared to what we need to improve this school.
And I disagree that the 70% that do not have children in this district right now, which some of our board members don't see this as an investment that they're willing to make.
I'm not saying that, but we
They
have
kind
to.
of say that, so I just want to balance it
No,
out with
but
it's
we
not a
have to
blanket
look-
statement.
Tax increase percent is important to the community, okay? I'm not saying we go to the low end, but we shouldn't go to the index.
Mr. Maris, I'm going to go back to the high school. There was never a discussion, I've been told, there was never a discussion when those elementary schools were built. We can't even put, even if we could afford the teachers we needed, we can't even put in all-day kindergarten in our elementary schools because they weren't built properly.
And that wasn't the board's fault. That was strategic management, administration made mistakes.
I disagree.
But
I think if the
ultimately,
board had
board-
asked
they
for that,
couldn't
Clear, that wasn't any administration that's here. That record.
Exactly.
could have asked for it to be planned more.
But the board, again, the board ultimately makes the decisions.
But the people weren't in the right places to make the right strategic plans to do the things that needed to be done. And
Well,
now we have that right.
Then
people
we're
in place.
doing the same thing for the future.
But what I'm telling you is you look back at the 15 years, the amount between the increase in the index is nothing compared to what we're talking about with these improvements.
But if you
I can show you numbers next
Charles,
meeting.
I agree with what you're saying, but the problem is we never did anything with the high school. I mean, the minimum now, if you go back to the beginning, is $100 million to put a roof on it, an air conditioning system, and upgrading the things. We never did any of that.
10, 15 years ago, it wasn't in as bad a shape either. And I've been in schools in the Lancaster School District
But
where the
Charles, it
conditions were much worse.
Charles, don't start driving around Lancaster City and seeing the buildings they're doing to the remodeling.
Yes, they
they're doing
finally
to-
made improvements, yes.
So
Ever since I've been on the board, we came on at the same time. The board was not willing really to pursue talking about renovations, building. It was all, oh, we got these elementary school. Then we found out the plans for the expansion, which was supposedly going to cost $100,000. Nobody figured out, oh my gosh, if we have these many kids added to the school, how the heck are we going to feed them? Oh, we can't. So
There actually was plans to put a new high school in back in the 90s before my time on the board.
I
And
lived here in the 90s.
so, and I believe they wanted the Taj Mahal. My understanding is they went way too high and everybody on the board got voted off.
That's correct, Mr. Merris.
Okay, we are where we are today because, in my opinion, there were several times, yes, we kept our taxes low. We started looking at this before COVID, realizing that we really had to do something. There's some board members that were on the board at the time and said, if we don't do some of this stuff, we're going to end up exactly where we are today. And we were like, it's going to be okay. We don't want to raise taxes. I was part of that, and then I changed my mind. And last year, I actually wanted the taxes to, my proposal was to go to 4 or 4.5. And I think another year, I also wanted to go higher. The board was unwilling to do that. That's fine. And you and I have always been on the same page about paying our support staff more. There are things that we have agreed on that we needed to do. But the bottom line is we are where we are today because some things weren't done by previous boards, whether it was the board last year, the board before Mike and I came on. There was, I'm sorry, I can't even remember who else was new that year. And so we are where we are today, and we have to make prudent decisions. And I'm thinking that I heard, and at some point, we can raise the taxes in order to begin the ball rolling and to get things going with a new building, with what we need to do with our property that we are responsible to maintain and take care of, and which we have failed in that responsibility. And we're the current board. Did we make that decision? Not necessarily, but it's ultimately our responsibility. We can't not raise the taxes. And what I heard was saying from somebody, after we get the ball going, after a few years, we can put those taxes back down.
I think one of the things is we keep talking about the past. We're not here in the past. We're here and now and moving forward. So I mean, we can blame whatever. That's not helpful. We're here now and have to figure out the plan now. Period, and move forward.
Exactly. In
That's the only thing-
2005, 2010 wasn't necessarily the right time.
The only thing this board can control is we're here and now and moving forward.
Mr. Garber makes an excellent point. I was going to say the same thing. The only thing that I will add is if you look at the county millage rates, slide 8, we are right in the middle, and we are right in the middle of our comparator districts, the other wealthy suburban districts. Right now, we're sort of right where we are. That tells me that however we got here, whether we agree or disagree with it, we were kind of moving in the same way that most of the rest of the county was for most of the time. But to Mr. Garber's point, it doesn't matter, we're here now. Let's make the decision that's best going forward.
And you look at the impact.
In my opinion, it's 3 to 3.5.
You look at the impact of this additional increase for 6 years and the time value of money and how the loan bonds are stretched out. We are doing this with minimal impact on the taxpayers. versus trying to overtax them and go to the index. We are doing it, and we have an excellent architect, and the time is right. I think we picked the right time to make this change and modernize this high school. Now is the right time. 2005, 2010, 2015 was not. The Franklin gym, the Franklin Hall, the Franklin wing is how old? 70 years?
Yeah.
20 years ago, 2005, it was 50 years. That's not considered near as old. The roof is more in need of repair than ever. Back in 2005, it was okay. So I think we're at the right time, and as Mr. Garber says, we can't look at the past, and we got to look at the future, and I think we're on the right path. We're putting this project in with minimal impacts on the taxpayers. We don't have to go to the index every year to make this thing make sense. We're borrowing the money. 6 years, they'll see, the taxpayers will see the 1.7, 1.8 additional increase, and after that, it drops back off.
Mr. Merris, I'm going to add to this, not for, you talk about the extra money. I hope we get it for the state. But honestly, I think the one mistake that we made when we approved the previous teacher's contract is we never set money aside for the contract we're in here. Costs are going, salary is the biggest thing almost for every business. It's going to go up.
But we've included that in in this budget, correct?
I
With
know
the
that, but
teachers'
4
increase?
years from now, you're going to have to approve another teacher's contract. You're going to have to go through the same thing, whoever is on the board at that point.
And the additional 1.7, 1.8 will almost be ready to drop off.
Come up.
And there's a lot of things in that regard that we're not taking into consideration. Building projects, the evaluation of the homes, all the stuff that the county's gonna do. What's the reassessment of the homes? There's a lot of things in 4 years that can change, right?
Yeah.
And so right now we need to look strategically. We need a plan for the future, but we also don't need to get tied up in the what ifs.
And I guess the only other thing I'm going to request again, if Mr. Boberski comes back with cuts, he's in charge of the district. We don't debate the cuts. We allow him to do it. And you may say, he's in charge of the district. He knows what's best to do this. I know he would prefer not to do it, but I don't think we come to the board meeting and they propose a budget and he says, I'm getting rid of this, this, and this. We have to give him the responsibility to do this. We've given him guidance. Because I think that, if we spend time at the next board meeting saying, well, we can't cut this or we shouldn't cut that, that's his role. We've given him the guidance. That's his role. So let him do it and we live with it. Because that's the alternative,
Mrs. Hall, if we dip into our reserves, what does that do for our ratings?
So if we're only dipping in a couple 100,000, we're probably fine. Our rating is going to change as we continue to borrow, as that calculation
Sure.
turns upside down. I think we're going to see a change to our rating at some point in this scenario. It probably won't be with the next one, but the one following that most likely.
And we're
But I don't
actually
think
close to the
that's-
maximum, right? We're close to the 8% max.
We were when we filed, yes.
Yeah.
But now that 8% is more because our budget is more.
so.
Do you know what our total unassigned and all fund balances, capital reserve, do you know what that is for the district?
Yeah.
If you don't have it now, we can talk about it next time.
So total fund balance, you want to say, everything
That's
in
right, you gave it to me.
is with all the capital as well as 86 million. We also, don't forget, we have over 50 million in capital reserve.
Some of that's borrowed dollars, if you recall.
And I think some of that 50 million is already spoken for a couple of the roofs, a couple of air
Well,
conditioners.
We also
and-
have to spend it within 3 years
Yeah,
of borrowing.
But some of that's already
Committed.
It's
commit.
earmarked.
Thank you.
It's earmarked, yeah. Like, we have to spend that.
Mr. Garber brings up a good point too, in that this is a strong financial district, and I don't doubt that as the economy rebounds, the revenues will continue to improve.
I still come back to the fact that I really believe it's okay to take a tiny bit of that risk this year with that 4%. I don't believe we're going to have to trim anything. I believe we can use some reserves if we need to, but I still don't take away the fact that as we're looking at raising our revenue or taxes, and that is our revenue that we control, it is important for us to look at making sure that we have clear direction around what makes sense and what we're running, what programs we're running, what we're not running, and making sure that those numbers, the number of the classes have the right numbers in them, and that we're not running classes with low numbers, which is very inefficient. And that's an ongoing piece that I would just ask that we continue to support the administration in doing strategically and appropriately. That doesn't fix the answers today. I'm still comfortable at the ceiling for me of 4%. I think we have direction for Karen. We do have one other item on the agenda tonight, but I don't want to shortchange this discussion. It's one of the biggest decisions a board makes, and it has impact on community. It has impact on the district. And so if there's more we need to talk about, we can surely do that. Right now, again, I think the floor is going to be 3.5 and the ceiling is the index. And I feel like there's a number of us that are supporting something somewhere in between there around 4%. And so we're going to need some movement right now. We're probably going to be at a stalemate related to this. So please go home and think about this and consider, are you willing to do anything different related to your thinking around this? Because we need at least 5 votes.
I guess to me, the ceiling is 4%. Because if you go to index, he doesn't have to make cuts, correct, Mrs. Hall?
Correct.
So to me, it's.
Yeah, we have a surplus.
I meant the ceiling of what the board's willing to do.
Yeah,
he's
but
talking about a
again,
different ceiling.
He's got to have something to do. So I would say the 3.5 to 4 was, because that seems to be where most people are going.
So, Mr. Donato, your preference is the 4.8 personally?
Right, yeah,
I
but
just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I think Mr. Waldemuth is correct. It's 3.5 to 4 is where we're at. And unless, because we're not voting on the budget tonight, we're not voting on the tax increase tonight.
no, we're not,
So
everything could change.
so that's why
The next time, but again, you have to give them some, that's why I agree with you,
Guidance.
3.5
I
to
think
4.
we're what I want to see.
Sorry, 4.8.
Okay, I
I'm
mean,
sorry, I misspoke. 3.5,
and
4.8.
I'm not rigid in my thinking. I would just like a little more data.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Does anybody have any other thoughts around this? So thanks for clarifying that, Mr. Donato. I agree with you. It's for them, the ceiling's the 4.
Yeah, I mean,
All right. Any other thoughts or questions around the budget and the tax increase? All right, we have one more item on the agenda. It's the contracts. You're going to see a list of contracts on here for approval. It says the 29th, but I think they're meant for approval at the May 13th. I'm sorry, it does say the May 13th board meeting on the other one. So they'll be on the agenda for the May 13th board meeting. Does anybody have any questions about these contracts? Did you have a chance to look over them? I've questioned that Apple contract before, so I'm not going to revisit that. That's for the students. I would just add, though, Mr. Graham, I have in the past questioned, it's not on this list, the need for 2 devices for staff. So I don't know where we're at with that, but it jogged my memory to ask that question again as to why we need 2 devices for all staff. I think it's an area of opportunity that is not mission critical.
The short answer, just give you a little bit of background. Like we said, we cut down and purposely eliminated a lot of other classroom technology to get to that point, whether that's overhead document cameras, interactive whiteboards, a lot of technology you see in other districts. We consolidate that all back into one iPad that a handful of staff do have in addition to their main laptop. So while you could look at eliminating that, you then get to the point of having to add back in a whole bunch of other devices to make up for that loss.
My ignorance is that do they need two iPads to teach, or is it one that they keep at home and one that they
No,
keep?
they have a laptop and an iPad. That's it.
Okay.
That's a standard teaching staff equipment set, not.
Like I
a
said, my
staff
my
member.
ignorance side.
Yeah, I'm just gonna push back on that a little bit, and I don't want to get into a deep discussion about it tonight. But I would suggest that you can use an iPad as your laptop with a keyboard, and that I'm struggling to understand the need for both. I'm still not completely convinced that that's a completely necessary. If you need the iPad, then use it as your laptop. Any questions or comments about the contracts?
So we're going to discuss the Apple at the next meeting?
The Apple contract, I understand, is for the students, right?
That's the one.
Yeah, this is students.
Spoke
Yeah.
device thing.
The two device thing is a question I've had from Mr. Graham in the past about the need for teaching staff and to have two devices when they could use the iPad rather than have a $1,700 potentially additional laptop on top of the iPad. It's unrelated to this contract, Linda.
Our staff MacBooks are only $800 each, and we generally maintain them for close to 10 years in different forms.
That's fine. It's still an expense.
I asked a question because
And I do have a question about the iPad lease, and I feel like I've asked this before. It's a 3-year lease. Could we work with Apple to extend the lease to 4 years or 5 years and not cycle them quite as much? Or do they just receive so much abuse that won't work?
There's a couple different factors that play into that.
Again, I'm
yeah.
thinking in the spirit of the previous discussion.
There's a residual value that drops off pretty significantly after 3 years.
Okay.
There are significantly more battery issues after 3 years. That in and of itself, the 3 years is really a sweet spot for that particular device where you're getting money back, it works well. The other thing we are doing that is different with this compared to when we started, we are switching from a fair market lease to a dollar buyout lease.
Okay.
Which means at the end of that, we technically own them and can resell them as opposed to a fair market lease where a leasing company is effectively getting all of the profits from the device. So we're 2 years into switching over to that, and we'll likely have significant income from that when that process is
So
done.
we would just wipe them clean and then like just sell them?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, whoever, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of that switch that also comes into play is kindergarten has never fit into the one-to-one leasing cycle. The last refresh we did was with ESSER money. So since there is no long-term kindergarten built into the refresh cycle, us switching to the dollar buyout essentially means we can replace those kindergarten iPads with iPads coming out of other grade levels. And then we avoid having to pay anything to refresh kindergarten. That's extending an iPad to 4+ years within the district, which kind of speaks to.
I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah.
And Mr. Graham, that's because kindergarten does not take the iPad home. It stays
Generally, no.
in the
Yeah.
class.
Barring sickness or
Correct.
family travel or whatever, but yeah, that varies.
Any other questions on the contracts? All right, hearing none. We are going to be adjourning to an executive session to discuss safety and security matters and a contractual matter after this meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
No, they'll be on the next meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn, Mr. Keener, do you say?
To executive session.
To executive session, thank you.
Okay.
Second, Mr. Garber. All right, all those in favor? All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.